The scene before him was nothing but a blazing inferno of rubble. Bodies lay scattered, swords and spears crisscrossed. Blood painted the ground crimson. Those who fell today, and those who fell long ago. All that was known was the clash of steel. Jaeger and his sworn enemy, locked in a bitter feud, clashed in a final showdown. The enemy swung his sword. Jaeger parried with his own. Jaeger's sword, the symbol of the Jaeger clan, a powerful family guarded by two ferocious dragons, a blade coveted by all, a ducal family, protecting the empire in the northernmost reaches of the continent. The reason the Jaeger clan stood strong as the northern wall for over 1,000 years was due to a unique physique, a special bloodline, said to have inherited the blood of dragons. All those who carry the Jaeger bloodline are born with extraordinary magical power, unyielding strength, and swordsmanship talent. All, except me. Jaeger coughed up blood, a fatal wound in his stomach. A voice spoke as Jaeger collapsed. Have you still learned nothing after all this? Jaeger's enemy threw him a scornful remark. Jaeger, some things are in your blood, things that no matter how hard you try, you can never achieve. It's called incompetence. But that familiar voice caused the boiling rage to cool down instantly and shift into confusion. What? The person removed their mask, revealing a white mustache. He sneered, inheriting none of Jaiwa's talent, and then spreading wide, the aged face and blazing red eyes of the man said, I would be angry too, young Master Teo. Ah, an acquaintance of Jaiwu? Indeed, from this moment on, you will truly understand. He was pierced by an invisible blade. From behind, Jaiwu cried out in despair. Ryan, why? Contrary to Jaiwa's expression, Ryan calmly recounted his lack of talent. You see, every morning, watching you train relentlessly, despite having no talent, was such a pitiful sight. His next words were clearly meant to humiliate Teo. Clearly, especially since all that hard work led you nowhere. He laughed cruelly, relishing in Jaiwa's pain and uselessness. A shred of compassion. He had no reason to pity a talentless fool. In magic, ignorant of swordsmanship. Foolish Jagger, it suits you. You should just leave, you waste of space. It's laughable to see you struggle, trying to amount to something, facing the abyss of despair and bitterness. He gritted his teeth and endured. Jagger plunged his sword into the ground. You approached me to become a swordsman and taught me useless sword techniques. Jagger's throat felt like it was about to erupt. If Jagger were an extraordinary man, he would have spat out each word like fire, just to chase me from the Red Flower Palace. You bastard. But Jagger's response was a terrifying silence. Only his sword drew a line of blood across it. Excruciating pain tore through Jagger. His skin tore flesh, ripped open, blood gushing out. Jagger screamed in agony. Amidst the pain, Rendon's voice remained calm. And you blame me? He grabbed Jagger's hair, saying, all of this is happening because of you. His pupils constricted into cruel, red dots, carrying Jagger's bleeding body. His voice was hoarse. Why don't you understand? He gestured outward, forcing Jagger to see a magnificent scene engulfed in flames. His voice was a rasp in Jagger's ear. Why is the Red Flower Palace burning? Why are your clan members dying? A cruel smile twisted his lips, as one of them dragged a woman by her hair. Why? Your mother. The bastard threw the woman's limp body to the ground. Brutally, Jaekyung saw that the woman, an awakened, was dead. The one he despised was now a cold, lifeless corpse. Something was snapping. It was Jaekyung's emotional tether breaking, while the man's voice continued to ring in his ears, gratingly. Because you're an idiot, Jaekyung. He continued to ramble, lecturing a child struggling to process the information. In the family, ruled by strength, information about his mother's fate. Jaekyung only knew she was there, dead. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from Jaekyung's chest, jolting him awake. A robotic voice echoed in Jaekyung's ears. You have received a reward. All your stats will increase rapidly. The next thing he knew, a bright light enveloped Jaekyung. Despite his confusion, what the hell is happening? The robotic voice announced, commencing next mission. Unsure of what was happening, Jaekyung felt tears streaming down his face uncontrollably. Jaekyung wondered if things would have been different before the inferno engulfed him, Zhonghua, and his ill-fated mother. A cold, factual voice announced, you have died. Then, unexpected news for Jaekyung. Based on your characteristics, Jaekyung's Return to the regression point has been activated. Jae-kyung jolted awake, a sword in his hand, and Rendon's voice was even. You seem tired. Jacker was filled with bewilderment. As Rendon announced, all right, let's end today's lesson here. The teacher and student stopped. About 100 more steps would lead them to the castle entrance. Rendon tilted his head, saying dreamily. He poked the wooden sword close to Jacker. Confused, he thought, what? Didn't we just die? Jacker tried to rationalize the scene before him. I must be reliving my life. According to Jacker, Rendon's memory statue was called. Jacker, equally bewildered as the young master. Jacker insisted. I can't believe the face I'm reliving. Is Rendon's hateful face. Jacker let out a long sigh. Death is so cruel, even in the final moment. But while Jaka was distracted, a system window appeared before his eyes. Startled by the strange light in his vision, he froze. Right in the middle of the old man's face staring at him was a notification. Tutorial quest. Punch Rendon in the face. After reading it, Jaka was even more bewildered. Jaka was utterly confused as he read each word. Tutorial quest. Punch Rendon? What the hell is this? Jaka looked back and forth between Rendon and the system window, wondering, is this normal? Do people have flashbacks like this before they die? I don't think he can see this. While Rendon had a blank expression. What's wrong? Then Jaka decided, that's it. He dropped his stick and clenched his trembling fists, trying to convince himself that he didn't know what was going on. Perhaps this was a gift from a higher power, granting him a chance to vent his anger before death. His hand reached out, fist clenching. He charged forward with a single thought. Even if it's an illusion, I'll give him a beating. His target, the hateful face of that bastard. Chandung. Jaehyun lunged forward, fist ready. A punch, a Jaehyun special, exploded in the training grounds. In his eyes, the scene slowed, like butterflies fluttering in a garden. His fist connected with a cheekbone. Chandung's face contorted in surprise. Both Jaehyun and he were stunned by the reality of what he thought was a dream. How could a dream feel so real? His punch felt weak, yet as fast as a meteor streaking across the cosmos. One side of Landon's cheek had regenerated. A moment later, he backhanded him, fast and hard enough to send him flying. Backward with a yelp, he tumbled a good long distance. Landon calmly remarked, I thought class was dismissed. Jaiwoo was still disoriented. Meanwhile, a pained groan escaped his throat. What is this? Can I feel pain in a dream? Landon sighed. He said, I understand your frustration nearing the awakening ceremony, with no progress despite your best efforts. The two words best efforts from him sharpened his attention. Awakening ceremony, and his voice remained softly instructive. But I cannot tolerate a student disrespecting their teacher. He toyed with the wooden sword in his hand, lecturing as he spoke. And as a swordsman, you should use a sword, not your fists. He then turned to leave, leaving behind a promise. I will see you at the next lesson. While Jinho was still trying to understand what was happening, insults came pouring in from his peers. Idiot! How could he disappoint his teacher like that? The insults continued even as Landon left. Is this guy for real? He's pathetic, even for a bastard. His peers tried to cram every insulting word they could think of into his ears. If that's all he can do, despite their heartfelt efforts, they were oblivious to the fact that their words weren't reaching Jae-kyung at all. At least, not until now. He was trying to piece things together, faintly moving, his fingers touching the dirt. It sent him into a hazy, dreamlike state. I can't believe this real feeling is coming from the pain in my stomach. Jae-kyung's thoughts continued to flow. The sharp pain he was experiencing, along with the warmth of the soil on his hands, made him question the reality of it all. He realized it. He stood up with a newfound awareness of the world he was experiencing. This wasn't a flashback. It was real. Jae-kyung still couldn't believe the awakening ceremony will take place in 2 years. Does this mean I've returned to the past? How can this be happening? Suddenly, a system window appeared before his eyes. He looked at it curiously, reading each line. Congratulations. You have completed tutorial mission 1. Reward. Player's talent activation. The words fueled the unknown within him. What? It prompted. Do you want to receive the reward now? Yes/no? Jaehyun tentatively reached out and touched the word yes on the screen. The word yes transformed into a light on his chest. He jolted awake. At the same time, it notified him, amidst the light on his chest, You have received the reward. All your stats will increase rapidly. Light enveloped him. Regardless, he hadn't even processed what was happening when another notification popped up. Begin the next mission at the Red Flower Palace. A cup of tea was set down, accompanied by a mysterious voice. I understand. Facing the other side is Rendon, the guide of the ancient heavenly blade. Rendon, Hayes, he complained, to be honest, I've never seen such a useless AI. Then his demeanor quickly shifted into a smile. But that's why I'm here. You're replacing random play, the world tree. I will teach him everything I can. I will make him strong enough to participate in the awakening ceremony in 5 months. At least, that's the plan. The person sitting opposite him was the madam of the Red Flower Palace, Cecilia Jacques. She smiled at him. Yes, I entrust the boy to you, Landon. She handed him a bag of coins. As payment for Jacques' education, please take extra care of him. He replied politely, of course, I plan to teach him day and night. Don't worry, Cecilia. Have faith in a mother's trust. I'm not worried. I believe in Theo. Once out in the hallway, he dropped the act, saying, you should be worried. Even if I teach him properly, the truth is he's completely useless. He sneered as he counted the gold in his greedy palm. Like concubine, like son. That bloodline will never amount to anything. Now, this is excellent. Looking at the gold in his hand, he thought about a hefty reward and the title of the main family's mentor in the Jeeker clan. Come here. His gut, as dark as hell, couldn't help but grin. As a reward for revealing information about Theo and interfering with his growth, that person will secure my future. As if that Jeeker fool is my benefactor. Suddenly, a figure appeared, walking towards Rendon, startling him. He recognized the figure. That idiot. Yes, that Jeeker fool was striding down the road and brushed past him. The sight of him always annoyed Rendon. He clicked his tongue. Tisk, seriously. He muttered spiteful words about Jeeker. 7 defeated men stood under the setting sun, their shadows cast long by Lady Jagger. She was instructing a servant. Turning around, she heard her son's voice. Mother! He stood before her, panting. Worried, she asked, what's wrong? He said nothing, just rushed into her arms. She thought to herself, he must be tired from training today. But his tight embrace made her uneasy. My son, why? Hidden from her view, tears streamed down his face. A glimmer of hope. He was truly back. Jagger held her tighter, knowing he'd returned to the past. 15 years ago. Memories of his mother's lifeless body flooded his mind. Before him, she lay cold and still, her eyes closed forever. He stared blankly, eyes wide, despair washing over him. Jaeger let go, a slight smile playing on his lips. While she didn't understand the meaning of that expression, from her son, he was already planning. I have to change the future. He still remembered the blinding light in his chest, along with the notification, reward activated. Jaeger's talent has been initiated, and the memories flowed with his thoughts. I'm weak now, with nothing in my hands. But if that mysterious notification window is real, with these useless empty hands, he swore to paint them with blood. The ambition to survive on that throne, I can become strong. Strong enough to stand firm in the fight. For that damned throne. Thinking of this, he longed for his mother's embrace even more. Continuing with his intentions. Even if it means shattering every bone in my body, it's better than letting my hated enemy live freely. My will is strong enough to crush him. My resolve firm enough to get revenge on Rendon. A notification rings out. Tutorial Quest 2. Push your body to the limit, surpass 100% before the sun even rises. From its slumber, a young man named Theo Jaeger has already awakened, driven by rigorous training and burning ambition. I crave revenge against Rendon right now, but with this weak body, just a few laps around the yard, and I'm already telling myself, I can't do this. I need to focus on getting stronger first. As he runs, he recalls his past life. The intelligence agency he once belonged to. In my past life, at Black Language, I was transferred to the information gathering team due to lack of talent, but I never thought I would use the gathered information this way. Within Joker's intense memories, a jar with a pointed lid appeared. The jar reminded him of a medicine that could strengthen the body tremendously, the Blood Sword Emperor's elixir. He was certain that, among the books left in the world, its true value would be revealed in the secret manual. And more than ever, Joker realized that the most important thing was the harsh training that he had given up on due to his lack of talent. Joker diligently continued training until the sun awoke from its slumber. His feet pounded the ground relentlessly. He kept running, lapping the field, with confidence and hope blooming on his lips. Anything felt possible, because he had the talent of a chaser. The notification window was real. Now, the notification window indicated his stat level was over 100% at level 27, until his peers on the training ground were left wondering, how many laps has he run without rest? How is he so strong? Later, the endless running transitioned into sword practice, with a goal set in his mind. I will run more than I ever have before. Jack swung his sword relentlessly, hoping and swing his sword more than ever before. At this rate, he excitedly thought, I can truly become strong. The notification window popped up, informing him that he'd reached 65 out of 100 on the stat. A few days later, he was still training on the field. At the crack of dawn, even the observer yawned. It was Evelyn Navergi, the manager of Training Ground 4. She took a drag of her cigarette and muttered, He's been training nonstop for days now. That goofy kid, Jake Young? She paused for a moment before continuing. Evelyn questioned the boy before her. Is he really that incompetent? Looking down at the field, she saw Jake Young pushing himself to the limit. He was exhausted. But just 3% more, and the board will show 100%. He continued swinging his sword, pushing himself with the words, Train your body to the limit. Last night, following Jinwoo's advice, he trained to the point of near death. He reached 90%, but then the percentage suddenly dropped, down to 89%, surprising Jinwoo. I didn't expect it to decrease, just from resting a bit. He then performed a vertical slash, encouraging himself. I can't stop now until it's complete. The number inched up to 98%. Jinwoo gritted his teeth and slashed again. And then once more. He looked exhausted but kept pushing himself. Almost there, he told himself, just a little bit more, and swung his sword one last time. The percentage reached 99%. As he started running, swinging the wooden sword in the air, his breath grew ragged, his chest tightened, but he pushed himself a little further, just a little bit more, until he could barely breathe. Jake Young's relentless effort made Evelyn, who was watching from the stairs, wary. She was astonished by his sheer tenacity. Another lap around the yard, the number remained at 99%, unchanged. The extreme exertion made him grimace. Finally, it ticked over to 100%. His pupils glowed red, reflecting the light from the notification panel. The number transformed into words on the notification panel. Jake Young was still running. Congratulations! You have completed Tutorial Quest 2. Jake Young immediately collapsed as the notification sound rang out. Ting ting, you received a dragon as a reward. Bonus reward for completing the quest with lightning speed. You've received 15 past life spells. 2 options appeared above Juliek's head, yes/no, along with the question, would you like to receive your rewards now? His hand trembled as he slowly reached towards the blue light. He chose yes. Immediately, the system accepted and notified him that he had received the rewards. Juliek closed his eyes. A sudden burst of light enveloped him. Whether it was a blessing or a curse, Evelyn witnessed everything. However, Juliek found himself lying in bed. He quickly sat up, looking around and wondering where he was. At that moment, she opened the door and walked in, her voice calm as she explained, Please don't worry. This is the resting room for training ground number 4. Even if it was just a dream, you'll exhaust yourself if you keep pushing like this. Noticing the striking pink hair, Jaker recognized Evelyn. You asked if he remembers me? I'm the head mate of Branch 4, Evelyn Nezari. Let me summarize the situation for you. You collapsed while training alone this morning. So, I brought you here. Jaker simply replied, I understand. Then he thanked her. She handed him a glass of water and continued. But young master, I'm sure you know that in the Jaker family, opening your mana hall before the awakening ceremony is forbidden, correct? Faced with her question, Jaker replied, Of course. She continued, So, you know what will happen if you break this rule? Taking a sip of water from the glass she offered, Jaker was speechless. Why are you suddenly asking me that? Jun was met with her darkened eyes and a curt reply. Right before you lost consciousness, Evelyn uttered a word that made his nerves instantly tighten like a bowstring. There was a surge of mana that coincided with the opening of the mana hall. Her face darkened. A forbidding red aura emanated from her. She seemed furious. Did you perhaps open the Huss Hall? CO, she called out, using the name Jun knew him by. Her voice sent a shiver down his spine. What are you talking about? My hall. If I had opened it, I wouldn't be alive right now. Suddenly, a light emanated from his chest. He remembered running. The notification that popped up as he collapsed. You have received Dragon's message as a reward. Bonus reward for swift completion. You have received 15 spells from your previous life. Oh my God, he exclaimed internally. His face went blank for a moment, then broke into a bright, triumphant grin, as if he'd just won a medal. Dragon Heart. Dragon Heart. A mana storage can be placed inside a dragon's heart. Placing the mana storage in the heart makes it operate with greater efficiency. But humans, creatures that are not dragons, place it in the lower abdomen, because the human heart cannot withstand the mana storage. That's why every warrior, like Joker for example, yearns for a dragon's heart. It's the shortest path to immense power. However, humans have never been able to break their own limits. Jacker knew victory was in his grasp. The medal, the dragon's life, it was all his. Pride swelled within him. Now, the dragon egg belonged to him. The quest reward was beyond imagination. But back in reality, faced with a ferocious woman and her sword pointed at him, he wanted to beg for mercy. Because of this, he was caught in a dilemma. Before him stood great swordsman Evelyn Nevesi, who retired after losing her left arm and became the manager of Training Ground 4. But the image of the pink-haired woman amidst the cold winter flashed before his eyes. She was the commander of the White Dragon Armored Cavalry. Her skills were so exceptional that even the White Dragon Armored Cavalry's demon dragon admired her. In her hand, she held the scales of justice. Her gaze, filled with authority, was enough for Jacker to conclude that she was known for her unwavering strictness. His brows furrowed slightly as he assessed her. She wasn't someone who cared for status or power, and she had no tolerance for deceit or any form of cowardice. He dared only to search his memories when faced with her brown eyes. Once, because of his stubbornness, she had relinquished her position as his direct mentor. In other words, if she were to discover the dragon heart mana core within him, a chill ran down Jacker's spine. At the thought of the consequences, he would be executed immediately. Yet, at this thought, a faint smile touched his lips. Suddenly, he blurted out a question. Can you handle it? With another thought in mind, what if it goes unnoticed? He said, frowning. Are you threatening me just because of your momentary feelings? Throwing a jab at her. Do you dare to bear the responsibility? Forcing her to keep silent, because she was his leverage. I can turn the tables with sharp reasoning. Words sharp as knives spitting out fatal arguments. I'm also a descendant of the Chion family. If it turns out that your suspicion is completely baseless, this could be considered an insult to the Chion family. Faced with the sharp words, she could only agree. That's right. That's the law, he added, his voice almost a growl. Do you know what the punishment is for insulting a descendant of the family? No, she replied. Execution. Just stick to the data. Evelyn's personality is in the palm of my hand, he declared, confronting her. Good, you know. Then why don't you test it? Increasing the pressure on her. What is this feeling? What kind of person is he? But she firmly held on to her argument. But that's definitely mana waves. She held out her hand, light emanating from her palm. Let's see if you say so. Her magic scanned Theo's body, because she didn't believe it, even if he had Joker blood. Rules are rules. No matter what, I must check. There are simply no exceptions. The results from the magic wave astounded her. Confused, she muttered to herself, no mana core? This result was undeniable proof. Despair flickered in her eyes. Was I wrong? Impossible. At that moment, Theo knew he had won the bet. The Joker's voice echoed in her ears. See? There's nothing there, is there? Evelyn instantly fell to her knees. Her voice boomed throughout the room. Execute me. I was wrong. I will atone with my life. How could she have known? It was his game, after all. A dragon's heart is different from a normal mana core, because the mana core within a dragon's heart is inherently unique, can be controlled by the user. A smile accompanied the thought. In other words, I can conceal my mana at will, thanks to his erudite master and his vast knowledge. He had won this round, and the fact that humans could possess a dragon's heart wouldn't be known for years to come. His hand extended towards Evelyn, a cunning glint still in his eyes. How could she have possibly guessed? Surprisingly, he touched her back, gently saying, It's all right. Leaving the prisoner, who was awaiting punishment, surprised by the unexpected pardon, Taos my. You were just doing your job, weren't you? Not many would risk their lives like that. Then he turned his back, carrying his calculations with him. Evelyn was one of the strongest. Making her indebted to him would be more beneficial. Then he spoke aloud. Furthermore, the reason for restricting access to the mana storage before the opening ceremony is due to concerns about mana overflow. His voice remained even in front of Evelyn's bewildered expression. You're concerned for me. The Joker's bastard, overflowing my mana storage, is quite amusing. He walked away, leaving a thank you. Thank you for your concern, Evelyn. But it was just a peaceful trap, a camouflage for Kai's prey, and she was the insect falling into the open mouth of it. He walked with his calculations, a dragon's heart, and 15 magic powers from his previous life, walking along the hallway with glorious victory in hand. This time, I will be invincible. A few days later, the day began, with Run yelling in his face. No, that's not it. Swing your sword a little more to the right. He shouted in frustration. How many times have I told you? Amidst his anger, Theo Decker was scheming. I'm getting stronger, but pretending to learn from Run is really difficult. He cursed Run under his breath. He was certain that he was secretly teaching him swordsmanship techniques. Oddly enough, right next to his ear, he grumbled, a little more to the right. Letting him fuss over his posture, he busied himself with organizing his thoughts. I'm sure someone is behind Run, instructing him. The river of the past rushed through his mind. The one who killed me. I have to find out who he is. His train of thought ended as a sudden realization dawned upon him. It brought a slight smile to his face. Right, Theo said, calling the man's name, Landon. He shouted, young master, there's no talking. During training, suddenly, he snapped the wooden sword, then boldly pointed it at him. I don't understand what you're teaching. It's all useless. His eyes widened, his throat tightening as he growled. How can someone with your skills even be considered an intermediate swordsman? Because he had realized the task Landon had received. Theo scoffed. He felt that you would struggle, even against low-level demons. Landon's insults made his voice tremble. What? What did you just say? Really? Theo saw right through him. This guy was definitely faking it, acting as an instructor to monitor him. While time to go all in, he took a step forward, bellowing, are you deaf? He confronted the man, his gaze piercing into his hollow soul. Your skills are nothing but trash. And he swore he'd get him fired. Just as he predicted, the man yelled, young Master Theo. He'd successfully poked a nerve, completely disrupting his plan. If anything happened, he would definitely contact the mastermind. Behind the Camellia family, a young man burst through the door, shouting, Ashton, he delivered urgent news. Have you heard? Shows bastards. There will be a match with my master next week. The guy he's talking about is that young man holding the glass, and he continues to boast and brag. It seems he's blaming his master for his own incompetence. He'll be crippled for sure after that fight. Before he knew it, the glass was already flying towards his face. Shards of glass pierced his eye. Blood mixed with the spilled liquor. He screamed in pain, ack, and collapsed. The young man, Acheon, gritted his teeth. What do I care if some bastard lives or dies? His ruthlessness was on full display. But what can you do? He is the black tortoise of the Northern Four Guardians, Acheon Jaeger, and the white-haired man beside him is also one of the Northern Four Guardians, Silver Tiger, Jimin Thanatos. Then the door opened, revealing a third voice. He should have been crippled a long time ago. The figure standing at the threshold was one of the Nine Skies, Extravan Y. A word of warning. Complacency is a dangerous thing. Azure replied calmly. I only fear the competent. You worry too much. He asked, why do you care about that bastard child? Extravan Y responded with dreams of things that could never happen, fueled by the slightest possibility. Y preached his reasoning. A single ember in the wind can ignite a fire. Extravan continued, shifting gears. But I suppose it's a good thing. He said, that instructor will take care of this for us. 1 week later, at training ground number 4, a large crowd of teenagers filled the stands, watching the match. Among them were Evelyn and a mysterious man. Below the stands was Theo Jacker. He cursed under his breath. Damn it, I have to face Rendezvous. Initially, he had only planned to humiliate him and get him fired. But standing in the stands, he realized there was no turning back. Things had gone too far. Well, he thought, it's come to this. A notification popped up above Theo's head. Quest. Guide player BA to defeat Rendezvous and win. Theo resolved, I will get my revenge on Rendezvous. Rewinding a bit, Theo challenged Rendezvous. I told you, your skills are garbage. Then he bluntly declared, you're fired. Rendon, get out. Despite him yelling, young Master Theo, he roared, I won't accept this. There's still plenty of time left on my contract. But Theo just turned and insisted. What does that matter? If I say you're fired, you're fired. A bloody vengeance simmered within him as he thought of his past life. I want to kill him right now, but I'm not confident enough in my abilities yet. First, I'll get away from him and gather more information. As he clicked his tongue, he thought frustratedly, I won't give up. No, if I get fired like this, my mission will fail. I have to convince him somehow. So he resorted to pleading with legal arguments. Young master, please wait a moment. This is against the rules. But what? A light flickered on the notice board, piquing his curiosity. Forget that loudmouth. If I report this to the court, the words before him were confusing. What is this? Suddenly, Evelyn appeared. I propose that she smirked, settle this the hacker way. Her sudden appearance startled both of them. Evelyn, the hacker way, she continued. The rule of the strong. Let's decide with a sword fight. No need for court. We simply follow the victor's will. Jackpot, he whistled gleefully. Great idea, and thought, I'm saved. While he was still worried, her voice rang out softly. That day will be in a week. She smiled. Is that okay? However, judging by his speechless reaction, of course not. Looking at the man's arrogant smile, he hesitated. I can't beat Grid yet. And so, exactly 1 week later, the schoolyard was packed with people. The stands buzzed with chatter. From what could be heard, he can't even swing a sword properly? No way. Is he still a daydream? The murmurs continued. If he were just a normal daydream. We wouldn't say that. Is he Satisfy's cripple? Whispers echoed throughout the stands. How could he defeat an intermediate swordsman, right? Because Jin Woo is an intermediate swordsman. He scoffed. Young master. If you apologize right now, I can pretend that this never happened. Before he could finish boasting, he was interrupted. I should be the one saying that. A novice swordsman like Taeyong dares to talk back. On the contrary, if you don't want to become a one-armed swordsman, you better accept the truth. The words successfully twisted his smile. Even now, he calculated each step in his mind. A sinister plan. I thought I'd let it slide this once. Because he's so pathetic. But I can't. I'll kill him and pretend it was an accident. His eyes flashed with a bright purple light. He thought to himself, the outcome of the match was clear. Actually, that made it even more interesting. Then, with a smirk and arrogant tone, he said, then attack me first, disciple of that old man. I'll even let you have the first move. As he spoke, the other man swung his sword and charged. If you insist, I won't hold back. The first man took a defensive stance. A clang rang out as the two swords clashed. The onlookers immediately realized something. One of them couldn't help but exclaim, how can this be? Look at the fight. That idiot is about to lose. He really doesn't know how to use a sword. He'll die at this rate. But regardless of what they said, his sword continued to block the attacks. The situation struck the first man as amusing. What's wrong, young master? You can't do anything against a mid-level swordsman you look down on? And of course, he was just as arrogant. This is an obvious outcome. According to Jin Woo, he wasn't even a low-level swordsman, but a trainee. Landon couldn't hide his smirk, especially during the time he swung his sword and assessed. Recently, his skills might have improved a little, but not enough. If he were at least at the level of the 4 Northern Guardians, it would be a different story. He scoffed at Jinwoo's resistance. But no way. That fool Jinwoo can defeat me. Rewinding back, the match began. Jinwoo rushed in and immediately questioned Evelyn. Evelyn, what were you thinking suggesting that match? She was already sitting on the chair, not looking the least bit surprised. She calmly replied, I'm helping you, you know. If you want to get rid of him, you need to be more ruthless. Evelyn continued, it seems he has someone backing him up. So simply firing him won't be enough. Her words made Theo's face fall. Evelyn, how did you know? She calmly answered, because he taught you a strange sword style. I had someone secretly investigate him. According to her observation, the man's lesson sounded like, create an even more perfect right angle. At that moment, Evelyn thought to herself, this right angle thing seems a bit excessive. Where did this bastard crawl out from? It made him wonder Did Evelyn not realize this? In her past life? Was it because he had attracted her attention? Due to that mana storage incident? She set down her teacup and slowly said, "From my investigation, the investigation shows that this man is walking a dark path." She continued, her voice filled with implication. "All traces of Renan lead back to the Camellia Palace." Immediately, the image of a magnificent castle appeared in his mind. He understood its significance. Camellia Palace, all for this disastrous war. For the throne? Those bastards. He fell into deep thought, but then he spoke aloud. "It's surprising you figured out that much." "Not bad," he spoke, returning to the harsh reality. "But with my skills, I still can't defeat Jidon. So what will you do?" Just smiled. "You can beat him. You're underestimating your own potential." "Young master." Right now he was charging at him with a yell. "If you kneel and beg, I might spare you." He brought with him his furious gale and swung his sword, only for it to stop. He thought again. Wait, something's not right. His enemy had much more strength left. Jae-hyun resisted with only the sword in his hand and the red glow in his eyes. He and he swung their swords continuously. He attacked, he defended. As they exchanged blows, he realized something. He's been blocking all my attacks for a while now. Sparks flew as their swords clashed. Metal against metal. After a flurry of exchanges, he realized this wasn't the Theo he knew. What was going on? This isn't the Theo Decker I know. His arms grew tired from blocking so many consecutive attacks. He wondered how had his skills increased so much. The shift in the fight stunned the spectators in the stands. Their jaws dropped. Theo? What? Is he being pushed back? And among the crowd, a suspicious figure in a hooded cloak watched. As the stands buzzed with chatter, "Don't you think he's putting up a good fight?" Evelyn casually smoked a cigarette with a smile. Time rewound. Evelyn proposed a week. She promised him, "If I train you for a week, you will easily overpower someone like Renjong." She said, "Although teaching you myself is against the rules. Renjong is a bastard. He doesn't deserve to be a teacher." Receiving her proactive offer, he smiled faintly. Because everything seemed too good to be true. He thought to himself, "It's unbelievable. As if the goddess of fortune has kissed my cheek." He couldn't believe how smoothly things were going. It was worth letting Evelyn owe me a favor. However, there was one thing that worried him. He pondered and expressed, "Why are you helping me this much? Is it because of what happened last time?" She smiled with her eyes closed. Understandable, since someone we know is quite interested in him. He's quite fond of recruiting talented individuals. He turned the tables, pushing him back step by step, thanks to Evelyn's week of training. They clashed, stale, forming a right angle with the crossblades. His technique made him wonder. He had no talent from the start, so how could he? He pressed his sword harder. He pushed back thinking, or was he playing dumb all along? But why? Amidst the intense fight, he suddenly asked Rendon, "Who's behind you?" Startling him, causing him to swing wildly and push him back. "Behind me? What do you mean?" Looking at his reaction, he calmly said, "You think I don't know? That you've been teaching me useless lessons this whole time?" He yelled, "How absurd! Do you know how hard I tried?" Cutting him off, he got straight to the point. "The real issue is the Camellia Palace, isn't it?" He flinched, silence following his laughter. "You're honest?" "Good, Landon." He stood poised and said, "Do you know what it feels like?" His sword lunged beneath the man's forearm as he continued. "To have your arm cut off?" Before he could react, it was too late. The sword flashed, severing his arm. Blood erupted. The severed arm flew through the air. His eyes followed the airborne limb. His arm was already gone. The one who didn't hesitate to swing his sword was Theo Jaeger. In the stands, everyone was horrified, even the mastermind himself. Pain shot through his head from the wound, making him scream in agony. His screams were followed by the cries of the man collapsing, clutching a gaping hole in his arm. He gritted his teeth, repeating over and over, "My arm, my arm. You bastard, you dare?" Theo's footsteps approached, accompanied by the thought, "Because of this, I'm certain I've become stronger." Thinking that, Theo stood before him, while he still couldn't believe what was happening. Impossible. Impossible. Theo became even more certain that he could become even stronger. He said, "What did you say to me last time? This is all my fault." "Ain't sight. What do you mean?" His hand trembled as he drew a short sword from his back. He coldly reminded the other man, "You brought this death upon yourself. A blood feud, never to be forgotten. In this life, Theo swore to take revenge. His voice was filled with hatred. Among jackers, the strong rule. He repeated the words the man once spat at him. You are the weakest. Ignoring the man's pleas. Wait, Theo only knew that his blade had severed the other man's head. The blade in his hand dripped with crimson blood. A notification appeared. Congratulations. You have successfully completed Tutorial Mission 3. Witnessed by many, including the masked figure, Evelyn's gaze, and the enigmatic smile of the mysterious man. The notification popped up as his head flew off. For exceeding the objective, you have received an additional reward. He stood there unrepentant. The hatred in his heart finally quenched. The system prompted. Would you like to receive the reward now? Yes/no. The system announced. Reward has been received. His eyes were cold. Amidst the chilling atmosphere, only grid silhouette remained. Before him lay the body hacked into pieces. The head and arm rested limply on the ground. Those around him witnessed the gruesome scene. Pure terror reflected in their eyes. Someone stammered in disbelief. That idiot won? A trainee swordsman against an intermediate swordsman. They were still in shock. How could he be here? He coldly stared at the corpse with dried blood in front of him. Was I ever this weak? How could I have been defeated by someone like this before? Teo's eyes gleamed with a chilling coldness. Red as blood mixed with the fresh blood splattered on his face. But it doesn't matter. Everything is different now. Everything will change from now on. The system notification popped up. The observe skill has been activated as a reward. In addition, magic power has also been enhanced. Seeing that, Theo rejoiced inwardly. Oh, magic power I understand, but what is observe? As he was wondering about the new skill, a silver figure from the sky descended upon him. A loud boom echoed as Theo crashed to the ground. The surrounding rocks began to crack. A tremendous explosion erupted behind Theo Jacker, leaving him stunned and momentarily paralyzed. From within the thick smoke and fire, a pair of legs clad in iron armor strode towards him. The figure boomed Theo Jacker's name. Startled, he turned to look, recognizing the familiar voice. It was Ju Jaitai of the Desolate Tribe. A knight, adorned in imposing iron armor, exuded an aura of majestic power, stood smiling triumphantly at him. It was Ju Ryu, the demon dragon Jacker, commander of the White Dragon Armored Cavalry. Seeing that familiar figure, Theo Jacker couldn't believe his eyes. Demon dragon? He gasped, eyes wide with shock. He felt an invisible pressure weighing down on his shoulders. Countless questions flooded his mind. Why was he here? How long had he been here? The surrounding knights were equally astonished. Some were so shocked their jaws dropped. That was the commander of the White Dragon Knights. Why would one of the 9 dragons? Evelyn Zombie was speechless at her commander's sudden appearance. She placed a hand on her forehead and asked, Commander, you destroyed the floor. Was it really that hard to enter normally? But elsewhere, from Juriyong, a powerful blue energy pulsed outwards. It seemed to want to consume everything around it. It destroyed everything. Even Theo didn't understand what was happening and simply turned his head, looking at the person slowly approaching him. What's going on? He seemed to not understand what he did wrong. How wrong he was to make the commander so furious. What did I do wrong? Looking at the other person's bloodshot eyes full of killing intent made Theo extremely anxious and worried. But in response to the tense situation, Ju Jaehyuk had a smug grin on his face, seemingly very satisfied with his performance. Of course, Ju Jaehyuk walked over happily, patting his shoulder a few times in praise. Interesting. Very good. Excellent. I'm really surprised. You brought this to Theo? Has the student surpassed the teacher? But you forgot that. The difference in your physique is vast. A few blows were all it took to make you cough up blood. But he quickly returned to the main issue. Because you fear the impending trouble? A little worried because you killed him, that's all, right? Anyway, from what I've heard, that guy deserved it. Hearing that, you hesitated a bit. Chu Lu, with his optimistic spirit, let out a hearty laugh. Forget about it. Then he called your full name, Theo Jagger. Hearing his name called, you were surprised. He placed his strong hand on your shoulder, solemnly offering a proposal you wouldn't even dream of. You couldn't believe your ears. Join the White Dragon Armored Cavalry. Evelyn seemed to have anticipated this, and could only sigh in resignation. But she was also happy with the commander's decision. But for others, it was utterly mind-blowing. Everyone screamed in disbelief. Impossible. That Joker idiot got selected for the White Knights of Sao. No matter how skilled he is in combat, suddenly, a mysterious, cloaked figure addressed a brown-haired young man beside him. He asked in wonder, "Huh?" The mysterious figure was none other than Jinwoo Natsuo. He asked, "Listen, has there ever been a case where a trainee swordsman, someone who hasn't even undergone the ritual, an awakened, has been chosen?" Hearing this, the young man hesitated, unable to answer. But the young man quickly replied, "I don't know. The one in the white cloak. I already have my answer. Of course, this has never happened before." Jimin sat among the crowd. Although he didn't outwardly express his surprise like the others, he couldn't help but be astonished by the recent turn of events. His mind was deep in thought. It's impossible to accurately gauge someone's true strength when their mana core is still sealed. No matter how exceptional their swordsmanship, their magical abilities might still be insufficient. His eyes widened, trying to assess the situation and the commander's decision. No matter how brilliant Zhuge Liang is, even he couldn't be certain. But seeing Zhuge Liang's satisfied smile and considering his vast experience, looking at the person he had chosen, made him wonder, could the demon dragon see that potential to make such a gamble? According to Jacker, that name surfaced once again in Jin Young's mind. But contrary to everyone's expectations, right in the middle of the training ground, Theo raised his voice and refused the commander. "I must refuse." Looking at his frosty face, devoid of any expression, it was clear that Theo was not joking. This made Zhu Lu purse his lips. He felt like he could wear 10 pairs of pants on his head. Then, with the awkward atmosphere surrounding them, he forced a friendly smile. Even Jin Young couldn't believe his eyes. Did he just get rejected? Speechless? Even Evelyn's reaction is the same as those two. She was truly dumbfounded by Theo Jacker's answer. Everyone around them seemed frozen, their jaws hanging open in shock. In that suffocatingly awkward silence, a voice suddenly boomed. "What?" In the middle of the arena, a heavy atmosphere blanketed everything. No one dared to make a sound. Only Ju Yul continued to smile at Theo. But that smile, no one could be sure held any good intentions. After the incident, Theo's refusal to join the White Dragon Knights, rumors spread like wildfire, causing a stir among the people. "Have you heard? That idiot young Master Theo. I heard he killed his own master." The rumors continued to spread, causing more and more people to wonder if they were true, as well as the gravity of the situation. Will it be all right? Even the closest maid rushed to deliver the news. While the master was practicing swordsmanship, rumors continued to spread among the people. "Well, doesn't that imply his master is weak? Actually, he seems quite incompetent." That caused a woman diligently practicing swordsmanship to stop her training. People continued to gossip, even though the incident had long passed. And after witnessing that, the dragon demon attempted to recruit him directly into the White Dragon Knights. The young master refused, feeling he wasn't skilled enough. The young master declined, feeling unworthy, thanks to those rumors. But Joker's descendants quickly returned to their home, including the silver-haired young man, despite the harsh blizzard. Elsewhere, a tall, muscular young man with tan skin and a straight posture, holding a wooden staff, also stopped in his tracks because of the rumor. A humble dream. How rare. That evening, while outside the blizzard raged relentlessly, inside Camellia Palace, torches blazed brightly. There a conversation was taking place. A woman spoke first, her voice stern. "Things have become complicated." She crossed her arms, gazing at the white snow outside the window, speaking to the person inside. "Unbelievable, he killed Rannon, no other than the mistress of Camellia Palace." Army Breaker, a cloaked man behind her, reassured her. "Please don't worry, madam. Didn't you send Random there? It's because of his poor skills." She turned her head, fixing a cold gaze on the man behind her. "The death of someone like that is of no concern to us." The brother who had just spoken to her was Jin Yohan, the Qian Ryong, a man with stern eyes and a sharp military uniform, his hands clasped behind his back. She turned and walked inside, sharing her worries with her brother. The demon dragon approached him. Moreover, they said Evelyn herself gave the order, which means we can't even intervene by assigning him a new master. If he starts to stand out, controlling Changhua will become even more difficult. As Amyong was speaking, A voice suddenly interrupted her. The door to the room swung open. Bathed in the light from outside, a figure appeared. It was Jack Seong. He scratched his head as he walked in. He couldn't understand what the woman was so worried about. Why are you so worried, mother? There's no way the head of the clan would care about this. Our plan can still proceed as normal. His mother, of course, knew that. She crossed her arms and retorted, I understand that the best way to control Changhua without offending the head of the family is to follow weak Theo, right? He was glad his mother understood that. That's what I'm saying. Aetion walked past them, simply waving a hand towards the table. 2 envelopes lay there. He was calm, thinking that everything was still under control. That fool was still weak. What could someone like that change? Evelyn and the dragon demon always cared for the weak, but Ed was not pleased with his attitude. With a stern face, he coldly reminded Aetion he should have said, don't make such hasty decisions. His words gave him pause. He immediately fell silent, slowly raising his hand, as if using his ability. Fine, since mother and uncle are so worried. His eyes glowed with a deadly purple hue. Turning around, the letter in hand, he gave a wicked smile. Having found a new amusement, I'll play with him for a bit, and let him know where I am. The next day, at the training grounds, sunlight filtered through the thick clouds and shone down upon the arena. The storm had passed, leaving behind a gloomy, cold atmosphere. Eberle sheathed her sword after today's training and turned to praise the young master. You did well today, young master. He was also pleased with completing the training. Slinging his sword over his shoulder, he spoke cheerfully. Thank you, Eberle. It truly is different, learning from a proper master like you. But she dismissed it, placing a hand on her hip and asking, it would be wonderful if you joined the White Holy Church's Dragon Knights. Why do you refuse? Thinking of Ju Yul's heroic image and dignified posture, sword in one hand, riding a silver dragon with wide, spread wings in the vast sky, he felt a tinge of regret. The White Holy Church's Dragon Knights? It would be a lie to say I don't regret it at all. It was my dream in my past life. But now, I have my own plans. With a silent smile and blazing red eyes, he was satisfied with the present outcome. However, joining now wouldn't be wise. Seeing himself radiating a splendid aura, with excellent skills, welcomed by many, made Theo excited. There's no reason to limit myself too early. When I think about the privileges given to the top ranker in the awakening ceremony, joining the White Dragon Knights is nothing, he replied with a humble smile. I don't want any privileges. I still don't think I'm good enough. I'm content with you training me for the awakening ceremony. Evelyn didn't notice the contradiction in his answer and smiled and agreed. All right, the commander will have high expectations. At that moment, he activated his ability. Only a pair of glowing red eyes opened, drawing in a faint stream of power that snaked around him. Looking in a certain direction, the person Theo was looking at was Evelyn. Ahead, stats and information appeared simultaneously. Observing Evelyn Nezari, former vice commander of the White Dragon Knights, a high-ranking swordsman. He smiled, satisfied with his newfound ability. This observation skill is quite useful. I'll definitely be able to make good use of it later. Suddenly, something caught Theo's eye. A status line within Evelyn's information piqued his curiosity. It was a record of her thoughts and feelings during her prolonged interaction with him. Suddenly, from afar, someone interrupted their conversation. Excuse me, young Master Theo. A knight with dignified silver hair raised his hand in a respectful salute, introducing himself. I come from the southern checkpoint. My name is CPU Ria. I have something to report. Does that make you curious about me? He naturally didn't trust him. He looked too creepy. He was an AI, so he observed the notification that popped up showing that the ability had been activated, observing CPU Ria. CPU Ria was so overjoyed that he couldn't hide his sinister smile, and his face blushed like a young girl's. Exactly. But without the information from the system notification, looking at that appearance, anyone would think that he was picking a fight. He only had an intense desire for Tail, and only wanted to fight him. That smile, that both Theo and Evelyn were terrified enough to draw their swords? A yearning for a spar with that appearance. Why me? The system window displayed a new quest. The final tutorial quest has begun. Relinquish the title of Fool of the Jocker family. Before the match began, the The CPU resolutely made his decision. I want young Master Theo. He confessed. Actually, I've been ignoring you this whole time. I thought the nickname, the Fool of the Jocker family, suited you well. Hearing these words, Theo Jocker felt a bit irritated. The bastard didn't stop there. He continued to pour out his heart. But I learned that you went out every morning and trained harder than any other AI. The result of those efforts. He remembered the day he watched Jaekyung's duel in front of a huge crowd. It was your extraordinary growth that I witnessed firsthand, witnessing you being praised by so many. At this point, emotions surged within his CPU. You are my idol, young Master Jaekyung. When I wanted to give up on myself, after being called the Fool of the South checkpoint, you appeared. He bowed his head earnestly, pleading for a chance. Please allow me the opportunity to spar with you. Jaekyung stood there, speechless. He was still a bit apprehensive. Normally, he would doubt his true intentions. This man was a 17-year-old CPU Rhea, male, nicknamed the Fool of the South checkpoint, rank, trainee swordsman. With utmost respect, as Jehu requested a spar with Theo, he sensed a genuine sincerity from him. Seeing Jehu's earnestness, Theo felt a moment of surprise. After defeating Run, and with rumors spreading about him catching the attention of the master, spreading like wildfire, he thought those burdened by inferiority would flock to challenge him. Behind a crowd had gathered. Silenti Obsving Tao Zekui. It seemed unbelievable, truly unexpected that people would willingly follow him. He guessed it meant that the Jacker pride still lingered within them. His grip tightened around his sword. All right, I need my own people to become the head of the Jocker family. In this mission, tutorial mission number 4, escape the title Jocker's Fool, 28/100% is the final tutorial. The title I could never escape. Tutorial mission number 4, escape the title Jocker's Fool, 28/100%, and with this new opportunity, I will completely abandon it. He turned slightly and asked Ivory, can we spare some time? Ivory quickly replied, of course. Please show me your skills. Gripping his sword tightly, his eyes sharp as if ready for battle, he declared, by Jocker, trainee swordsman of the Red Flower Palace, waiting for the awakening ceremony. My master is Evelyn, unit. She stood in the distance, smiling faintly. Seeing him finished, he declared loudly, I am Pudia, trainee swordsman of the Southern Checkpoint, inheritor of the Girii family's swordsmanship, and proficient with the blade. Someone shouted, fight! Both quickly rushed at each other, fiercely attacking. Neither yielded. Feeling how fast his opponent was, Pugia was taken aback. He's so fast, Pugia exclaimed. Even though I'm called the Fool of the Southern Checkpoint, I'm confident in my speed. In a moment of distraction, he seized the opportunity to attack. Young Master Theo's skills. Truly, Grid felt that he was a fool. If this were his past self, he would have struggled to block a few blows. But of course, the thought barely finished. He raised his sword high and swung down powerfully, sending Kraugel flying. The move completed decisively. Now this is too easy for me. The blow was so powerful that Kraugel couldn't avoid. Vomiting a mouthful of blood, he crashed heavily to the ground, his pants tearing, but still managed to push himself up to concede defeat. As expected of young Master Theo, I've lost. Thank you. At this moment, Theo also expressed his feelings after the match. I have learned a lot. That was a good match. Then his gaze fell upon his reflection in his sword. Something occurred to him. Wait, can I use Observe on myself? He used his ability, looking through it. Observe is observing Theo Jaeger, beyond his expectations. All right. Information about Theo Jaeger appeared. Theo Jaeger, 17 years old. Male. Title, Jaeger's Fool. Talent, player. Sense, observe. Access denied. Access denied. Access denied. Access denied. Status, highly anticipating the awakening ceremony. Level 1. Strength, 13. Agility, 14. Stamina, 12. Magic power, 190. Intelligence, 11. Luck, -49. Access denied. You have become aware of stats. Stats will be noted numerically. He read and pondered. The abilities he possessed were categorized under talents, according to the first level of power. That meant, if he continued to perform these tasks, he would be able to receive 4 more. The thought made him a little excited. He could even check his stat values himself. Then he looked closely at his stats. Strength 13, Agility 14, Stamina 12, Magic Power 190. Intelligence 11, Luck minus 49. It seemed like his magic power stat was high, thanks to the magic from his previous life and the dragon heart. But why was his luck so negative? Was he cursed or something? Then he focused again. Magic Power 190, Intelligence 11, Luck minus 49. Is this why I was so unlucky in my past life? I need to find a way to increase my luck. He sheathed his sword. A noise behind him startled him. Huh? He looked at everyone, confused. Evelyn and Jaiwoo were struggling to get up, both looking in that direction. Evelyn thought that no matter how weak Rendon was, he was still an intermediate swordsman. Young Master Theo had defeated Rendon. He even received the commander's approval. With the principle of strength supremacy, there were two reactions from the Zucker household. Either they were jealous of him, or he became an object of their admiration. She couldn't help but feel proud of him. And those who trained here seemed to belong to the latter group. Everyone rejoiced, praising the rumors as truth. They wondered if they were in Jinwoo's place, could they withstand his sword? And among them, there was one who yearned to spar with Jinwoo. I want to spar with him too. This was on Hajin, 19 years old, known as the Pillar of Nejin County. A low-level swordsman with a talent fueled by passion and perseverance, burning with a desire to spar with Jinwoo. He observed all of Hajin's information. He smiled faintly. Suddenly, he called out, "Hajin," catching him off guard. "You know me?" He didn't answer directly, instead shouldering his sword and issuing a challenge. "Come on, fight me." Hearing this, Hajin quickly took a fighting stance. "It's an honor. I am on Hajin. As the third son of Viscount Noron, I learned the totemic swordsmanship." This time, he introduced himself more simply. "Theo Decker of the Hall of Roses. I look forward to a good match." With that, both rushed at each other like the wind. Their swords clashed. Basic swordsmanship proficiency increased. He focused on his arm, striking with great force. But just as his blade neared Theo Decker's head, he swiftly parried. Then, he knocked Arnon's sword away. Variable swordsmanship proficiency increased. He couldn't react to his lightning-fast attack. He hastily conceded defeat. "I lose." A notification popped up. "You have gained Arnon's approval. Luck increased by 1. He was surprised to see his luck increase. "Approval increases my luck. The SAO is also tracking my reputation. You've gained some experience points." Seeing this, he prepared to launch another attack. Then, he didn't stop at Arnold's surrender. He continued to attack. "I just need to keep fighting." The more fiercely he attacked, the more his opponent's endurance to attacks decreased. "You've gained the approval of Bernard Demizio. Luck increased by 1. The two continued to fight. "You've gained the approval of Eric Moran. Luck increased by 1. The more he attacked, the more approval he received, and the more his luck increased. Just like that, he fought almost everyone here. "You've gained the approval of Manfred Norbert. Luck increased by 1. You have gained Meng Young-no's approval. Luck increased by 1. You have gained Bei Song-jun's approval. Luck increased by 1. You have gained Kong Taemin's approval. Luck increased by 1. He was drenched in sweat, but he refused to stop. He wanted to keep practicing, even though more than half of the others were exhausted and worn out. Who's next? He glanced at his stats. Had he really fought this much? Guide Quest 4. Escape the Joker's Fool, title 29 of 100%. He was surprised that it had only increased by 1%. Then he came up with another hypothesis. Could it be because these are all people who have already acknowledged me? No, either I have to face stronger opponents or prove myself when underestimated. I need another event. While everyone was chatting, from behind, someone asked, "You look quite tired. Are you all right?" He quickly replied, "I'll rest when I need to. Not now. Let's move. We need to advance." "If you say so." A man in armor stepped forward, requesting a sparring match. "This time I will request a sparring match with you, Northern Lion Beck Jiaman Natsio." He was startled when he heard that name. Jiaman? Everyone was equally surprised. Jiaman, one of the 4 auspicious beasts of the North? The 4 auspicious beasts of the North include Hyuk Cheol San, Jui Jacob, Jiaman and Geo, and the action taker of the Camellia Dianthus. It's a title reserved for the 4 strongest of their generation. The awakening ceremony at the Zenker family. The man strode confidently toward Theo Zenker, stating his purpose. Jinwoo Natsio. I came early to witness the swordsmanship of the Zenker heir before the awakening ceremony. Meanwhile, he was also observing him. Observing Jinwoo Natsio. He too performed a ritual before the duel. I'm grateful that you granted my request. Jimin Natsio, 17 years old, holds the title of deputy clan leader of the Natsio clan. Silver Lion, one of the 4 auspicious beasts of the north. Rank, apprentice swordsman. Talent, swordsmanship genius. Keen senses, exceptionally diligent. Status, surprised by the appearance of an opponent he never expected. He, after confirming the information, quickly introduced themselves to start the match. According to Jinhyuk, son of the Northern Protector, Kai Jinhyuk was an apprentice swordsman, preparing to join the ceremony. He felt a surge of excitement. He never thought he would meet the swordsmanship genius, Geometry Cheonil, whom he respected so much. In this way, forgetting that he was carrying out a mission, his eyes lit up, his voice serious. It's an honor to cross blades with the renowned vice leader of the Natsio clan. A thought crossed his mind. I just want to fight him. With everything I've got, I look forward to a magnificent duel. Could his current self, both in a stance, ready to fight at any moment, could he defeat Geometry Cheonil, one of the 4 heavenly kings of the north? Both of them clashed, each fighting with all their might. Guide Quist escaped from Jacker's Fool title, 30 out of 100%. Their swords collided, creating a loud explosion. Jacker's eyes were filled with determination as he charged forward. Seeing that look, Jimin felt more excited than ever about this fight. Unfortunately, Jacker's sword shattered at this moment. Having watched the fight until now, Evelyn wore a complicated expression as she looked at the two. Seeing the shattered sword, the people below shouted worriedly, "Young!" Before they could finish, the match ended as the blade fell onto the arena. It was a pity that Jacker couldn't block Jimin's sword. Sounds of commotion rose from below. Young Master Taisen lost? Even so, Jinho blocked Jimin's sword strike with all his might. Jimin was right beside him. Jinwoo was frustrated. "I can't believe it," he said. Junyoung explained that it was an obvious outcome. No matter how much young Master Taisen improved, he looked at the person in front of him and continued, "He can't win against the 4 heavenly kings, the strongest of this generation." Unable to accept Junyoung's reasoning, he retorted, but the fighting spirit the young master showed. As they were arguing, a voice rang out. "I lost!" Both of them exclaimed in surprise, ignoring the bewildered people around him. Jimin took a stance to end the fight and then exclaimed, "Thank you for the match." Then he continued, "The sword you're using is worn out. Not to mention you're exhausted. This is my 7th defeat." Those words surprised Grid. No one on the battlefield makes such considerations. "I lost the moment I lost my sword," he replied, finding Grid's humanity strange. Jishuka unconsciously smiled. Then the two shook hands, ending this fight to become friend battle. The setting sun cast a magnificent glow over the scene. Jishuka extended an invitation, hoping to have a proper match with Grid. "Another time," Grid replied. "I look forward to it." Lowell was thrilled by the sight. "See, young master, following Grid is different." Regis's jaw dropped. He's been acknowledged by one of the 4 auspicious beasts. The system notification window popped up, announcing that the 4th tutorial quest had reached 35% completion. Irene was initially tense. Seeing the two shake hands, she breathed a sigh of relief. Back to Jinwoo. After that match, he silently acknowledged his opponent. "He's strong." Anticipating their future match, Jimin couldn't hide her excitement. Meanwhile, Jinwoo was recalling how he gained his talent and secret skills. "Through quests, I've become stronger, much stronger than in my previous life. But I felt it the moment our swords clashed." And he suddenly realized he still had a long way to go. Through this, Jinwoo felt the benefits of the battle. "It's a shame the match ended so quickly. But I still learned a lot. Not only did my luck increase by 10, but my reputation has also improved greatly." He continued to ponder, oblivious to his surroundings. "Unfortunately, the quest progress hasn't increased much, but I can still find another way. Which stage will help me gain approval?" Seeing Jake's prolonged distraction, Jaminhian called out, "Master Teo. Actually, we're not here just to fight you today," he said, pulling out a letter. "I want this letter to make dreams turn chaotic." An image appeared. The surroundings were enveloped in a bright red hue, with many people around, their gazes judging someone. Simultaneously, Jaminhian's voice echoed, "I invite you to join the Seryongho." Hearing the name, young Teo was stunned and surprised. Seryongho, a high society group that only the chosen few could join. Looking down at the letter, he still couldn't regain his composure. And Mr. Remington personally invited Mr. Cianwa. Despite having defeated the Beauty Rabbit, Jeha was quite nervous about being invited to the Four Dragon Society. He expressed his doubts. Would someone like me even be considered? Your team is quite famous. Hearing those words, Remington quickly interjected, saying, nonsense, you're more than qualified. Furthermore, it's not a terribly serious group. Then, he explained it simply. It's just a social group for people our age, preparing for the upcoming awakening ceremony. But that explanation deeply offended those around them. They all exclaimed, then why weren't we invited? I want to cry. His words gave him pause. I'm not sure of Jinwa's motives for inviting me. But the Serpent Dragon Society revolves around Asensio, and it's full of people who despise me. It's the ideal environment for me to complete my mission, and it will allow me to spy on Asensio and the Order. Camellia realized this was an opportune moment. He continued his analysis. I see no reason to refuse. He then took the letter. Thank you. His confident smile only enhanced. Add charm to Jack. In that case, I'll participate this time. The system popped up with a new notification. Tutorial Mission 4, progress at 36%. Sounds of admiration filled the air. Ooh, he's even participating in the Serpent Dragon Gathering. Seeing him accept without hesitation, Jimington was overjoyed. Wise decision. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Then he added, the next meeting will be in 2 weeks. Having witnessed everything, Evelyn silently smoked, sighing, I don't know what to do anymore. Moments later, at the Red Holly Palace, a bigger surprise awaited Jack. The door to the room suddenly opened, and Cecilia happily exclaimed, my dear son, startled by her appearance. Oh, Mom, I was just about to tell you. He was about to finish when servants started filing in, each carrying an item. Confused, he asked his mother, what's all this? Seeing her son's surprise, she excitedly explained, my dear, I hear you've been invited to the Jerryongho. The Jerryongho includes Ossian, that's sly Amy's son, and other outstanding talents like Jimin. Without waiting for her to finish, a servant quickly dressed him in the clothes. She continued to explain, they've even caught the attention of the council. Another servant promptly came forward to take his measurements. Everything from how you dress to how you behave will be scrutinized. She then picked up the measuring tape again, adjusting the width of the clothes. With a knowing look, she said, I know you always maintain proper decorum, but attire and demeanor are entirely different matters. Startled by her words, he stood speechless. Seeing her son's obedient silence, she smiled and continued. Fortunately, this is something I can help you with. Don't forget, I was once an actress. Her words brought a melancholic look to Chihian's face. I'm glad I can help you. My precious son. It made him remember his past. As the illegitimate son of a concubine. As a commoner, I always felt guilty for bringing you such shame. Even though it wasn't my fault, within the cold Chihian clan, I wonder how hard it must have been for you, having such a weak son like me. My precious son, you know what I always say. Overcome with emotion, she embraced Joker, holding him tightly. Despite her weakness, Cecilia struggled to say, I believe in you. You can do it. Feeling a level of trust he had never experienced before, Joker smiled contentedly. Without further hesitation, he returned his mother's embrace. In this peaceful scene, as everyone around them was immersed in the moment, Joker declared, you don't have to worry anymore. Seeing his resolve, Cecilia started to say, my son is in chameleon now. But seeing his determination, she stopped herself. Meanwhile, Chayan was plotting. I will crush them. Time flew by quickly. It began to snow. 2 weeks later, the Serpent Dragon Association's banquet was approaching. Jermiton was standing near a carriage. He seemed to be waiting for Chayan. Suddenly, he looked up in surprise. A pair of black boots approached. Finally, the person's face was revealed. It was Chayan, but something was different. He seemed more noble and magnificent. He had changed so much in such a short time. His gaze was more mysterious and alluring. It took a moment for Jermiton to recognize him. Is that you? Young Master Theo? You look like a completely different person. Chayan blushed slightly. Even you're teasing me, Theowen? He chuckled in response. Ha, I'm serious. Then gestured for him to board the carriage. It's ready, please. Stepping onto the carriage, he noticed the changes in himself. He was right. Not only am I taller, but my muscles have developed too. This is the result of 2 weeks of hard training. He recalled the time he had a headache, remembered Theowin always saying, "Young master, follow me. Let's train." Realizing that during that time, Theowin visited him every day. They were quite close now. He also saw their stubbornness, as they eagerly trained alongside him. Chehuk thought, not to mention all the followers. Again, realizing the situation, Evelyn was flustered. "I only wanted to teach young Master Theo for a short time. How did I end up in this mess?" While she was at a loss for what to do, Joe Minton came running, calling for young Master Theo. Even though it was a brief moment, he felt like an eternity had passed. It had been an exhausting 2 weeks. Inside the carriage with Theo Minton, who was still brimming with excitement. "I heard this is your first official party." He replied, "Ah, that's right." Seeing his unease, Theo Minton reassured him. "Don't be nervous. I know you'll do well." However, hearing that, his face tensed, waiting for him to continue. Theo Minton quickly explained further. "Ashton himself can be a bit mischievous. But actually, Eisen was the one who extended the invitation to you. He said he wanted to meet you. So, I hope you won't judge him too harshly. He even prepared this party for you." Theo Minton's words took Jaeger by surprise. It wasn't Theo Minton who invited him, but Eisen. At that thought, a strange excitement filled Jaeger. Things seemed to be going too smoothly. The carriage sped along, ensuring they would arrive at the party as soon as possible. Jaeger's voice echoed in the carriage. "I'm looking forward to it." A strange thought crossed his mind. "I'll be utterly humiliated at." Elsewhere, a slender hand held a wine glass. The owner of that hand was none other than the Northern Four Dogs, Eisen Jaeger. He eagerly anticipated the upcoming feast. Full of checker, "I'm thrilled to have a new plaything." The next morning, at a nearby village, a carriage came to a halt. A voice called out, "We've arrived." Young Master Theo, a foot, quietly stepped out of the carriage. He leaned over, watching Ginanazio smile. By the carriage door, suddenly he noticed something. Ahead, a magnificent, imposing castle appeared, adorned in white and blue. White and blue. The place was all too familiar to him. Camellia Palace, who had instigated Randolph to interfere with his development, along with those who had devoured him, his mother, and the Honghoa Palace. Under the brilliant golden light, appearing under the clear blue sky, was the magnificent Camellia Palace. Jimin extended his hand in a welcoming gesture. "Shall we go inside?" He quickly replied, "Ah, sure." Amidst the vast palace grounds, he cheerfully started a conversation. "I heard that Taeyong will be greeting you personally. He must be waiting at the entrance." A different thought crossed Jungkook's mind. Taeyong's reason for inviting him was understandable. Even with Jimin chatting beside him, he was lost in his own thoughts. Because of that rising hunter idiot, he must be trying to block his path. Knowing them well, he just smirked. "But I didn't come here without a plan. I'll show him who he's messing with." A faint light reflected from an earring caught Jungkook's attention. From a high floor, a window glowed with light. Theo quickly recognized it as the blue light of a quest inside the SAO's palace. Suddenly, Jin Myung rushed from behind, warning him. "Master Theo!" From above, something hurtled towards him. Explosion erupted. White smoke billowed from the blast, spreading outwards. He could only watch the scene unfold. He called out through the thick smoke, "Master Theo!" He slowly emerged from the smoke, reassuring him. "I'm all right." He stamped his feet, dusting himself off, then looked down at the bag that lay in pieces on the ground. A pile of powder spilled out. He seemed accustomed to this sight, simply saying, "Flour." Only Jin Myung was furious, his eyes red with anger. Looking up, he shouted, "What the hell do you think you're doing? You're lucky. Because of the experience I've accumulated. If this were my past life, I wouldn't have been able to dodge that." Seeing the boy fuming, he thought to himself, "I thought Jimin was involved in this. But it seems like he isn't." He could make that guess, because the system showed him the boy's status. It was a look of bewilderment at the unexpected situation. Then he too looked up, where a window was opening, and the light from within greeted him with flour. From that window, a few bullies were laughing triumphantly, satisfied with their prank. "The ones who caused this are..." A hand from behind placed itself on one of their shoulders. He said, "Well, just a greeting between friends. It's basic courtesy, isn't it?" Jimin, of course, didn't let a single word sink in. He angrily retorted, "A greeting? You! That's action taker." He gave a sinister smile. as if what just happened was perfectly normal. What? Are you angry? Just consider this a greeting between brothers. He couldn't hide his excitement. At having the upper hand, the system displayed all his information, revealing his insane and twisted personality. But along with that came exceptional swordsmanship skills. He was also thrilled to have found a new plaything. That person was none other than him. He was silent, looking up at his new opponent. His lips moved, wanting to say something to him. Thank you. Just those two simple words. That made Jinwoo curious. Thank you. Below. He remained calm, clapping his hands in response to the greeting. Of course, with the way you welcomed me, I naturally have to thank you. I'm looking forward to today's feast. That made him grit his teeth, as things weren't going according to his plan. Then he gave a satisfied smile, his eyes wide with amusement. You've become much more interesting. Inside the room, where a chandelier illuminated the surroundings. In the room, all the students were gathered around. Whispers filled the air. Everyone's gathered here to chat and enjoy the party. Some students are gossiping. What's Hajin thinking? Even though he's from the main family line, the whispers continue. As a group enters the room, it's none other than Taejun and Jimin. The two walk side by side, a cold air around them, passing through the crowd. The gossiping continues, inviting that idiot to the Saryeon society. He still looks the same, nothing special. He's treating him like a joke. Jimin turns. Apologies for the atmosphere in the room, young Master Taejun. I apologize again. They're not usually like this. He was used to this, so it didn't bother him. No, honestly, he felt grateful. It left the boy bewildered. But only he knew. This charade. Keep talking, you fools. You need to badmouth me. At least this much, so I can crush you later. He didn't forget his mission, glancing upwards, where a faint blue light still flickered. By the way, it seems like the blue light I saw from outside is in this direction. I'm sure it's the mission, but I can't approach it naturally. Theo quietly took a sip of his drink, his eyes looking forward. From the top of the stairs, Assassin Jacker slowly descended. He greeted him. What's up? Enjoying the party? That quickly caught Ayano-Koji's attention. He tried to remain calm, reassuring himself. Stay calm, just stick to the plan. Then, with a cheerful smile, he extended his hand. Of course, thanks for the invitation. I'm glad to be here. Sorry about what happened earlier. I went a little overboard. He quickly approached, putting his arm around Ayano-Koji in a seemingly friendly manner, and asked, will you accept my apology? His presumptuous action was quickly met with a warning look from Kushida, but Horikita interrupted. Huh? Why apologize? That made him pause. Ayano-Koji maintained his composure, tilting his head as he responded. I recall it was just a greeting. His reply caught him off guard, leaving him wide-eyed. What? And instantly, he felt a connection between them, as if he'd just heard a hilarious joke. He burst out laughing and clapped him on the back. Oh my God, look at our Theo. You're so funny. I've never seen you like this before. You've changed so much. As the crowd's eyes turned towards them, he laughed loudly and said, I think I'm falling for you. Those around them, seeing this as a joke, scoffed and whispered, look at him, laughing like an idiot. A bastard with unknown origins could never compare to the noble blood of Choi-won. Despite his joy and excitement, the whispers continued relentlessly. Haha, exactly. Even among hackers, there are different levels. You can't compare Choi Yun-young, from a noble Eastern swordsmanship family, to some random woman from who knows where. Theo remained silent, smiling, secretly planning something. The crowd, oblivious to the tension, continued to chatter. But why is Jimington hanging around that idiot? Every word was a jab at him, making him frown, but he couldn't do anything, forced to endure in silence. Actually, if you look closely, Jimington is a bastard too. Careful what you say. With that warning, one of them feigned a response. Oh right, that's a forbidden topic. He continued talking, as he remained silent, head bowed. Seeing the silent, bowed figure behind him, his expression unreadable, Theo couldn't stand by any longer. He coldly withdrew his gaze, a gaze sharp enough to kill. I was going to observe a little longer, but it seems it's not possible. He called out to the person beside him, Hyung-suk. As a courtesy, Teo removed the other person's hand from his shoulder, smiling as he said, we should greet our new friends, shouldn't we? Under the watchful eyes of Jimin and Hyung-suk, he slowly walked towards the distant bar, gracefully picked up an expensive bottle of wine, and presented it before a blond man, the instigator of everything. The action made him wonder, what? Did I say something wrong? Quick as lightning, Teo tilted the bottle and swung it hard. A crisp clang resonated. Following that, the bottle aimed straight at his head, shattered. The action stunned both Hyung-suk and Jimin. Under Teo's furious glare, caught off guard, the man stumbled and fell. He clutched his bleeding head and screamed, refusing to give up. He struggled to his feet, blood covering half his face. He gritted his teeth and roared, "You bastard, you dare!" But a kick came flying at lightning speed. A devastating kick landed squarely on his face, sending him flying. Blood sprayed into the air. His eyes glowed red, filled with murderous intent. Anger etched on his face. He uttered just 2 words, "Amateur," ignoring the man's wails. He stood back, coldly saying, "Consider that a greeting." That's a bit much, don't you think? His actions successfully increased the mission's success rate and helped Joker shed his fool title. Everyone was stunned. What? What just happened? Was Theodore actually being foolish? Even Jemington couldn't believe his eyes. Young Master Theodore wouldn't do something like that. Wait, was it because of me? He quickly stepped forward. The greetings are over. He stepped on the blond man's arm, gently grabbing his collar. His cold eyes posed a question. So now we should say goodbye, right? Seeing his actions, the blond man knew something bad was coming. He hurriedly spoke. Wait, but before he could finish, his arm was snapped in 2. Witnessing Theodore's brutal act, everyone was stunned into silence. No one dared to move, not even Ashton or Jemington. A system notification popped up. Progress has reached 58%. The moment the blond guy's face went pale, drool dripping from his mouth, the progress bar hit 59%. Finished with him, Theo casually released his grip. He coolly ran a hand through his hair, glancing coldly at the rest of them. Anyone else want to say hello? He asked calmly. The progress bar jumped to 66%. Suddenly, 4 fully armored knights dropped from above. They took their stances, drew their swords, and charged at him simultaneously. For sharp blades aimed straight for Theo's neck. They shouted in unison. The sin of harming the young master. Theo wasn't fazed, only glancing at them coldly. The 4 knights shouted together. "We'll be paid with your life." It was all according to his plan. Looking at the blades pressed against his neck, he knew the plan was working. Yes, this is how it should be. Amidst the crowd, he asked for the leader's name. "Hey, who is this guy?" One of them quickly answered. The 3rd young master of the Hanoi family. Young Master Elon Hanoi. This was also part of his plan. "This is why I came to the Seryongho, a place teeming with enemies." With blades at his throat, he showed no fear, only uttering, "Oh," one of the 6 families supporting Joker, the Hanoi. Looking at them, he thought, these guys won't just stand by. When the fool they've always looked down on suddenly makes a move. A swordsman retorted. So what? He suddenly felt a terrifying killing intent, immediately raised his guard, maintaining his composure and initial resolve. But he was no longer. Amidst the crowd, he coldly questioned them. "Dogs of one of the families, servants of Jaka, you dare threaten me?" He glared at each of them. They looked as if they wanted to kill those insolent fools. "Can you take responsibility for those words?" Not just the knights at this moment, but everyone felt a terrifying pressure weighing down on them. They felt fear, their faces turning pale. Even though they were holding swords against Jaka's neck, they themselves were enduring some kind of invisible pressure. They simultaneously thought, what is this pressure? Is this the foolish Jaka? One of the blonde men silently reassessed the situation. Come to think of it, this guy was in line for the throne, a direct descendant of Jaker. His thoughts grew more serious. Jaker was the Northern Lord and the ruler of the 6 Snow clans. To declare death upon that bloodline, he felt a shiver run down his spine. The more he thought about it, this was a crime that could lead to the annihilation of an entire clan. Then the blonde man realized this guy was simply not raised properly. But it was too late now. We'll have to apologize first. By now, Jaker was done waiting. Surrounded by countless swords pointed at him, he commanded, "Kill them." As his voice rang out, just then a blinding white light suddenly appeared. The knights who were surrounding Jacker moments before were suddenly decapitated. Before they could react, Jacker seemed indifferent to the chaos around. At that moment, a sword materialized, the same one that had taken the knights' lives. The person wielding it swiftly carried out Jacker's command. After the strike, the figure remained motionless. Everyone below was stunned, their faces frozen in disbelief. Even Jimitin was taken aback. Just then, the system's voice announced that tutorial quest 4 was 70% complete. The one who had been watching everything unfold couldn't believe his eyes. Looking closely at the figure's face, he gasped, uttering a familiar name, Evelyn. But she, unfazed by the surroundings, asked Joker, "Do you know when I started following you?" Hearing this question, he calmly replied, "That's obvious." Then he started thinking, "I don't know why, but because she's following me, I can turn the tables without worrying." Those who pointed their swords at Joker just now lie scattered at his feet. Back in the past, a bottle of alcohol was opened, and the one who opened it was Zhuge Liu. He asked, "You said you wouldn't take any more disciples. So, is your new swordsmanship disciple satisfactory?" "No." Finding the bothersome question awkward, Yuan curtly replied, "Don't you have anywhere to be? Before I retired, you were always out and about." Hearing that from her maid Zhuge, Liu laughed heartily. "My recent joy has been to irritate you. So, what's your answer?" She continued to ignore him, replying, "That's expensive." Taking a deep drink, he repeated his question, "Well, what's your answer?" Evelyn knew she couldn't avoid it any longer, and finally answered his question. He did better than expected. He drank as she spoke. "In terms of attitude and ability, he's the most outstanding of all those I've taught." Zhu Lu was quite surprised, asking, "Aiden was also trained by you? But this one is the best?" This time Evelyn was serious. "Yes. When considering talent, I'd say his potential surpasses even young Master Ashton," she affirmed. These aren't empty words. Hearing this, True Ryu and Jack felt a sense of novelty. Because she has two eyes, she sees things more clearly than us. Then, feeling curious, he asked, "So, why did he hide his strength for so long? People can't just change so suddenly." Evelyn agreed with True Ryu's words. "It seems that way." She noticed Jack's strange behavior and said, "But it's strange when someone hides their true strength for so long and suddenly starts showing it off." She recalled Jack's relentless training day and night, realizing that hasty actions lead to stumbles. "But it seems like he's being chased by something and feeling restless. That's why I'm worried about his involvement in society." Seeing Evelyn's concern this time, Zhu Lu put down his drink and began to speak. "If you're worried, perhaps it's because of that kid, Asin. Then just follow him." Surprised, she asked, "What?" Zhu Lu explained, "It might be different from what you're worried about, but something will happen." He chuckled and said, "When young wolves seeking blood gather together, they'll start establishing their hierarchy." Zhu Lu gently placed his hand on his robe, continuing his words, "While you're there, try tempting Theo a little." His words left her stunned. Without waiting for her response, he walked towards the door, preparing to leave, and get him to join the White Dragon Knights. Both of them froze. Juriyoung turned back. "You think you can retire just because you can't ride a dragon? Come back and take responsibility for the person you recommended. Let's go." The wine was good. As Juriyoung left, Evelyn stood frozen, looking back at the bottle of wine and the white cloak. Evelyn said helplessly, "Because it was expensive." Back to the previous events, at the castle where the unsettling banquet took place. After recalling, "Why am I here?" Evelyn looked at Jacker, feeling disbelief. This time, she silently reassessed Jacker. He realized that he had followed her and intentionally orchestrated this situation. Perhaps he joined the Wyvern Guild for this purpose. From the beginning, he was someone I didn't need to worry about. Recalling the distance she had followed him, he still found it hard to believe. But when did he realize her presence? He was definitely not an ordinary person. Evelyn also wondered about Jacker, sensing her thoughts. I sensed her the moment she stepped onto the carriage. The owner of the Dragon Heart. Recalling Jacker's ability with this heart, it could amplify perceptive abilities, also known as a sixth sense. Thanks to that, the stage was set. Soon after, he called out to Evelyn and casually asked, "Most people here have shown disrespect to someone. What is the punishment for such arrogant sins?" Everyone around was terrified by his words, managing to only utter, "What?" Not even batting an eye. They solemnly replied, following the family law, and added, "We can carry it out immediately." The play was coming to an end. Xenoi just smiled in satisfaction. Everything was going according to his plan. Then he ordered her, since they are all children who haven't undergone the awakening ritual, Just take one of their arms and end it there. Hearing that, Evelyn rushed towards them, replying, "Understood." Seeing that, they tensely shouted, "Wait!" Her sword, without hesitation, flashed, severing each of their arms. The second son of the Bijan family. The eldest son of the red-white mercenary group. The fourth daughter of the CZ merchant guild. The son, third of the Clace family. First daughter of the Hose family. The system's sound rang out at the same time. Guidance Mission 4. Progress 72%, 75%, 79%. A runner knelt down, begging Ashton, "Please save me. Please." Despite seeing him crying and pleading, he didn't care, looking down at him like a fool. "Why should I? It's just a greeting." Ashton's words stunned him. "What?" Without letting him finish, Irene's sword slashed down. Glancing over, she called the name of the family's eldest son, Freud, ignoring the man's screams. Ashton stared at Irene, taking in the scene. Their eyes met. This time, Ashton spoke. "I didn't expect to see you like this, Irene." She greeted him back. "It's been a while, young master." After the attack, the system continued to report. Tutorial quest number 4, progress, 82%. The recent event made Action think. She only targeted those who made remarks about bloodline. She made it so that even I, as a successor candidate, couldn't stop her. Furthermore, he watched her back as she walked away. Evelyn approached Jaeger to report. "I have severed the right hands of 14 people, as you commanded." Hearing this, he replied, "Well done. What is their condition?" Without hiding anything, she continued her report. "If they take their hands to a priest, immediately they will be able to reattach them. Although their lives as swordsmen, it will be a different story." Seeing no cause for concern, Chan replied, "Good." Jimin, who had been watching, quickly asked, "Young master, are you sure about this?" Looking at the harmonious scene before him, Taeyong realized that both Jimin and Irene had become infatuated with him. Without him even noticing, suddenly he chuckled, thinking to himself, "Because of Chan, that fool from the Red Rose Hall has actually changed." Taeyong's sinister intention surfaced. "I want to crush you. I don't want to stay here any longer. Chan, tell them to let's go." Hearing this, Irene and Jimin agreed. "All right." Without a second thought, Jimin exclaimed, "Let's go." This time, Taeyong's gaze of utter disgust lingered on Chan. Without any hesitation, Chan stared back at him. Next, Jacker stepped forward and patted him on the shoulder. His hand lingered there for a long moment. For some reason, Jacker let out a strange, unsettling laugh. In front of everyone, he said, "Enjoy the party, Asin." At that moment, the system announced that tutorial quest number 4 was 100% complete. The system's voice seemed to please Jacker. "Farewell, until we meet again." Those words sent shivers down Asin's spine. The system chimed in again. "Congratulations, you have completed tutorial quest number 4 with Evelyn Zombie." Before Jacker could leave, Asin shouted after him, filled with rage. His voice echoed throughout the castle. Once again, the system reported, "All tutorial quests have been completed. From now on, no one will call you foolish Jacker anymore." Jaeger was in higher spirits than ever. The mission was a success. Not wanting to linger, the three of them quickly left. Jaeger thought about his next move. His true revenge had only just begun. The reward for completing the mission was an experience potion, granting 5 level-ups. The sun began to set, clouds drifting lazily by. At the castle, the setting sun illuminated a corner of a window. Someone was sitting there working. Suddenly, they exclaimed, "What?" Staring intently at the cautiously reporting subordinate. The stunned individual was Ami Jaeger. She tried to compose herself, asking for a repeat. "Reconsider Asensio's Serpent Dragon Guild." Elsewhere, in a common tavern far from the capital, the atmosphere was bustling with activity. The host raised his glass, a playful smile on his face, and announced, to celebrate the surprising debut of young Master Theo into high society. His words brought cheers from the crowd, and glasses clinked together. Cheers! The sound of joyful shouts and singing filled the air, making the party even more lively and vibrant, allowing Jaka to relax. As he lifted his glass for a sip, he suddenly heard a voice beside him say, "Defeated by that idiot Theo." Catching his attention, at Camellia Palace, under the cloak of night, in a certain room within the palace walls, a sharp voice rang out. Looking closely inside the room, Amy's fury was evident as she yelled, "You! Not only did you give that idiot an excuse, but you even let your subordinate get hurt." Despite being scolded, Action didn't defend himself, only replying, yes. Seeing her son like this, her anger flared. Listen to yourself. I've warned you time and time again, not to underestimate him. Forget about forcing him to submit. You just gave him an excuse to cause trouble. She continued to berate Action. I told you. Once that despicable man, following Jaiwin, starts to rise, taking over the Flowery Rose Palace will be much harder. Knowing it was his fault, Action said, don't worry, I will. But your current state of mind is completely unacceptable. I don't want to hear anymore. Go and reflect on your actions. You need to introspect on how you almost ruined our grand plan by chasing after trivial pleasures. Those words stung Asin like needles. He didn't say anything more, only replying, I will remember that, then quickly left, leaving Amy still fuming. As Asin departed, she voiced her thoughts. I don't know who he takes after, being so impulsive. From the shadows, a figure emerged, saying, well, he's the spitting image of his younger self, madam. Irritated, she retorted, do you find this amusing? Choi Tae-bin stepped out of the darkness beside Amy and said, don't be so angry. This incident can't be that serious. Confused, she asked why. He began to explain. The Red Plum Blossom Pavilion belongs to the clan leader's harem, so it's difficult to claim ownership, even though it's outside the clan leader's direct interest. Being just a gathering place for the insignificant, it still has the clan leader's backing. Choi Tae-bin's expression turned serious, continuing, therefore, what we need is... He clenched his fist, his voice hardening as he continued, a justification. He said, fortunately, he caused quite a stir at the Four Dragon Society. Theo is gradually becoming the face of the Red Rose Mansion, so we can use this incident as an excuse and crush him legally. Edwina's suggestion startled Army, prompting her to reconsider. The reason she was worried about Theo becoming stronger was because she feared that the Red Rose Mansion's influence would spread if the clan leader paid more attention to it. But by using Theo, who is growing stronger, if the Camellia Mansion, we use legal procedures to eliminate them. Then she contemplated the next step of the plan. Then the Red Rose Mansion will have no choice. Besides Choi Han obeying us, we can manipulate them effortlessly. Feeling satisfied, Army folded her open fan, happily asked again, so how long will the preparations take? It's within expectations, Edwin replied curtly. We've finished the preparations. Tell her that. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, you will hear good news. From his sleeve, he took out a gift box and handed it to her. So tonight, just enjoy a bath and a good night's sleep. I even prepared a scented candle from the volcanic region in South ASEAN. Those words made Army joyfully hug him. You really are my brother. Her affectionate words were a response to his action. That's why I can't stop loving you. Back at the tavern, Jimin was sitting in a corner, unable to join in the celebratory atmosphere. Actually, I'm quite surprised. I didn't know you cared so much about me, young Master Taehyun. Listening, this whole time, Jungkook couldn't understand what he was doing. What are you talking about, Jimin? Taehyun asked, his head lowered. I'm talking about the Four Dragon Society. The cryptic answer made Taehyun think that he was already drunk from just drinking orange juice. Now, Jimin felt guilty for what happened. He continued, while you endured those insults about yourself, the moment they started insulting me, a friend like you didn't hesitate to defend me. Young Master Taehyun, I couldn't do anything. It's so embarrassing. Having said that, Jimin felt less burdened but still ashamed. The more I look at him, the more amazed I am. Glancing over, Theo still looked stunned. And then I thought again, how he endured all that time being scorned, treated like a useless outcast. But in the end, he became extraordinary. Jinwoo's thoughts continued to drift. Even against those he couldn't defeat, he held on to an iron will to achieve absolute victory against the Camellia Dianthus, whom no one dared to face. He bravely drew his sword without hesitation. The more he thought, the more moved he became. All because of me. The system notification also alerted Jinwoo. Name was deeply moved, believing that Theo cares deeply for him. That announcement also stunned Jaker. He thought to himself, it seems he's misunderstood something. After a moment of contemplation, he decided his family had ordered him to build a good relationship with Action, but he had other plans. He couldn't hesitate any longer. Jimin declared, from now on, I will follow you, young master. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd cheered. Just as expected, the strong always stick together. The two of them were truly amazing. Realizing this unexpected turn of events, Theo muttered in confusion, "Wait a minute, I think you're misunderstanding." Suddenly, Evelyn's voice echoed in his mind. Let him do as he pleases. He immediately recognized it as telepathy. Then he turned to look at her. Evelyn smiled back. She seemed to understand what Jaeger was thinking. She continued, "This misunderstanding isn't necessarily a bad thing." At that moment, Theo also realized everyone was very excited, especially Simonton. All of them, at this moment, were enjoying the rare, comfortable atmosphere. Evelyn's voice spoke up again. "Perhaps everyone just wants to get along with you, young master." All of that made him extremely awkward. Finally, he sighed and said, "I'm not anyone special." His gaze darkened. "It's all thanks to this notification window." A large screen appeared before Jaeger, displaying all of his information. Looking at it, Jaeger hesitated and thought, even if I were to go back to the past, receive the alchemist talent, or become this strong, a lingering question remained in his heart. I wonder what this is? At first I thought these were fragments of my regret, but looking at its details, I don't think so anymore. He suddenly realized, I have a vague feeling like I've seen this somewhere before, but whatever it is, it's helping me so it doesn't matter. The system window clearly displayed his stats. Just by looking, he knew that with the Serpent Dragon Society incident over, his level had increased. While everyone was celebrating, he continued to study the system window. It seems like every time I level up, I get points to increase my stats. So, I think I can increase my power at will. Realizing that made him exclaim, "That's terrifying," but quickly became overjoyed knowing he was afraid of the bright future that he, who had become so much stronger, would bring. Evelyn had been watching him this whole time, wondering why Jaeger was so overjoyed. A moment later, Jaeger finally calmed down. "All right, first, I should prepare for the counterattack from the Camellia Palace." Then he called Jimin. "By the way, can you help me with something?" Being called like that surprised Jimin. "Of course, young Master Taehyun. Tell me," then quickly realized, but you just call me Jimin. Casually, without waiting for him to finish, Taehyun, Jaeger held up a piece of paper, said in a serious tone, "The fight for the top spot between me and Action will become more intense soon. To prepare for that time, help me." This action stunned him for a long moment. His gaze deepened. In the future, Jimin will become the head of the Nazio clan. His thoughts drifted, remembering Jimin's appearance. When he had enough power, and their forces would be strong enough to confront the Jaeger family. I should use this opportunity to pull Jimin to my side. The paper containing his belief was still being offered with hope. "Take this, Jimin." At this time, he still didn't understand what this paper contained, but he still took it from Taehyun, then happily replied, "Okay. I swore to follow you, young Master Theo. If there's anything you need, I can help. Whatever it is, I'll do it." Even though he knew he'd accept, Theo was still touched and thanked him. Hearing that, Jimmy didn't wait but asked, "But just now you called me Jimmy?" Rather casually, suddenly a rough voice boomed, "Tao Zaya," startling everyone at the party. A squad of knights aggressively barged in. Those around them became wary, shouting magic. Having just shouted magic sword, he didn't hesitate for a second, but pulled out a document and called out the name Theo Jaeger. He declared, "You are under arrest for the crimes of intimidation and assault." His words prompted Evelyn to retort, "What nonsense is this?" Seeing everyone getting agitated, Theo quickly stepped forward and urged, "It's all right. Everyone calm down." He stepped closer to examine the document. "Let's see." After a moment, he muttered, "It's a real arrest warrant." Looking at the text, he noticed that the ink was still wet. They must have been in a real hurry. Without further thought or resistance, he said, "Let's go." The man unceremoniously handcuffed him and led him away under the stunned gazes of everyone present. Young Master Theo, hearing that, Jaeger looked back, a knowing smile on his face. Jimin and Evelyn, as if understanding something. Quickly, Jimin looked back at the paper Jaeger had given him earlier. Evelyn also looked at the paper, at the Red Flower Palace. Upon hearing the news about Celia, Jaeger turned around and asked, "What? Where was Theo taken?" Then she collapsed onto the courthouse floor. The old butler, terrified, exclaimed, "Madam!" She quickly waved her hand dismissively. "I'm all right." Then, she asked, "What are they accusing him of?" The butler stammered, It seems to be because of the Seryongho." He continued, "They're accusing him of inciting a rebellion." She grew even more shocked. "What?" she whispered. "Do you think they'll actually take this to court?" He hesitated before answering. Yes, I believe so. Because he completely annihilated the Seryongho. This won't end easily. She couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. Who would have thought that him being invited to the Seryongho would lead to this? It can't be. He'll get through it. That's just the kind of person Theo is. She stood up with the old butler, looking up at the sky. She hoped, my son, please come back safely. Sunlight streamed through the window. Theo, in his dream, squinted slightly. Two people were beside him, keeping watch, taking him to be punished. He opened his eyes and observed the scene before him. Looking at the scenery, he suddenly remembered. It had been a long time since he'd returned to this place. The carriage moved through the gate, the courthouse. He thought to himself, since I completely annihilated the Serpent Dragon Society, this won't just end with imprisonment. They'll definitely take this to court. The wheels kept rolling steadily. His thoughts were still swaying. Bringing the heir of the Jaeger family to court means they want to question my right to inherit. The carriage stopped before the courthouse gates. The driver called out, "We've arrived." He was escorted out of the carriage. They must want to destroy me completely. A smirk played on his lips, but that's exactly what I expected. Heavy footsteps echoed within. The courthouse doors swung open. A voice called out from within. "The prisoner, Theo Jacker, has arrived." The voice continued, "Bring him in." His gaze hardened. Yes, if I want to reveal everything I've prepared, it has to be on a grand stage like this. Inside, rows of grand seats were positioned high. More than half of the attendees had already arrived. Looking at those seated above, he wasn't surprised. Indeed, many talented individuals had gathered here. The one with the eye patch was the demon dragon, Jin Wuchio, captain of the White Dragon Knights. This man is one of the 9 dragons who protect Joker. Next is the heavenly dragon, Edward Van, head of the Central Intelligence Agency. He suddenly remembered the past. If it were in his past life, he would have suffocated to the point of not being able to breathe. Next is the sword dragon, Ilsa Joker, madam of the Wame Palace. The man sitting solemnly in the center is the chief dragon, Walter Joker, chairman of the Walter Council. He sternly said to Joker. At this moment, someone approached and removed the chains from his hands. He replied, "Yes, chairman, I didn't expect to see you here." As soon as he finished speaking, he fell into thought. Walter, the chairman, values bloodline. To him, an illegitimate child like him must be disgusting. Everyone agreed. He wasn't even trying to hide. He didn't beat around the bush. He got straight to the point. Enough with the pleasantries. You know why you've been summoned here. To answer for your crimes, don't you? You stand below, looking up and listening to the judgment from above. The Bijan family, the CJ merchants, the red and white mercenaries, and even the Hanabi clan, because of your foolish actions. They are all screaming to sever ties with the main family. He couldn't contain his anger. You a bastard. Can you bear the weight of the losses you've caused? Therefore, I will hold you accountable for dragging the Jagger family name through the mud. You stood there listening attentively, waiting for him to finish before calmly responding. What you say is absolutely correct. He quickly apologized to the council. I was too careless, but his eyes suddenly changed. I should have executed them, not just cut off their limbs. The person next to him was astonished. What? He started to justify himself. They were our subordinates. Their master granted them land and status, and subordinates must offer their loyalty and their lives. This is the Knight's Code. The more he spoke, the more impassioned he became, and yet they dared to threaten their master? Now his rage erupted. If I had known they would be so arrogant, I would have beheaded them from the start. They must be punished, and the principles of knighthood must be upheld. In your opinion, how could we stand idly by? The Jaeger clan's honor has been upheld for over 1,000 years, yet it's been trampled on like this. Everyone listened, enraged beyond words. Kienryo, impressed by his words, thought, impressive, just as expected. This shouldn't end with a simple punishment. The general boomed. How dare you mock me with such words? Lady Asha Jaeger of the Manhwa Palace spoke up. I've listened to your opinion, and logically, you are correct. Displeased, he warned Kisong, but she continued, ignoring him. However, while Jaeger is strong, it's not truly great. If we don't listen to the voices of the vassals and knights, we will crumble. She added, because you cannot rule this world with brutality alone. He seemed to understand her meaning. I will remember that. His gaze lingered, sensing something. The chieftain's first wife, the best swordsman of the north, Sword Dragon Meikyang. She didn't seem hostile towards him. He recalled the scene of devastation from the past. But why would she? She added, I want you to understand that the punishment you are about to receive is justified. He asked, may I ask what that punishment is? He thought for a moment and then decided, 3 months of house arrest. He was a bit taken aback. But the awakening ceremony is in just 2 months, he said angrily. How dare you say that? She sat beside him and explained further. We've considered it and decided to allow you to participate in next year's awakening ceremony. Everyone thoroughly discussed it before reaching a decision. It was also decided that the 15 children you injured will participate in next year's awakening ceremony. Jinwoo thought to himself that thanks to the intervention of the Dragon Monarch, the punishment was much lighter than he had imagined. During the discussion, Jinwoo, Jaina's father, stood up in protest. I object to this punishment. Go Gunny still thought it was too lenient. Postponing the awakening ceremony is a great humiliation for you. Within the Go family, a sinister smile crept across his face. And for the representative of the Red Flower Palace to suffer such humiliation, we'll give our Camellia Palace a chance to rise once our plan succeeds. He won't be able to do anything. He'll have no choice but to accept it. He sees this as a good opportunity. If he foolishly tries to resist, we can eliminate him. But I don't think he's that stupid. He flatly refused. I want to appeal. Everyone was surprised that he wanted to appeal. Zedran clutched his face to stifle his laughter, his heart filled with glee. Are you crazy? Your arrogance knows no bounds. This makes things easier for us. Kienryo asked in astonishment. Do you understand what an appeal means? He firmly replied, of course. You seem to know something. I know that. This can't be resolved with just 3 months of house arrest. It's nothing more than a snap of the fingers. The dragon demon must be involved. Jinwoo explained. In a powerful and proud Jaeger family, assertion means a show of force. War, in his perspective. But I don't intend to accept even that snap of the fingers. Jinwoo smirked. In the end, only the victor has the right to speak. He seemed to be anticipating something. On the contrary, I look forward to a reward. The notification appeared, entering the main scenario. Everyone was stunned by Jinwoo's provocation. The notification rang. Through the scenario, you can uncover countless hidden secrets in this isolated world. Good luck. Scenario Quest, Path of the Successor. The scene is engulfed in flames of war. The war fires scorch the northern village. The secret of the Z-Car Guild. 2 people are clashing. One is knocked to the ground. The fire grows fiercer. A cloaked man stands motionless. Around him lie the fallen. Behind him, a voice calls out. So they were hiding here. It's Evelyn, puffing on a cigarette. Suddenly turning to look, Jimin approaches Natsuo, holding a small box. Just as young Master Theo said, Evelyn took off her hat, a sinister smile echoing Ed Joven's. Choi Han's Camellia Empire had completely crumbled. The scene resembled a courtroom, a trial in progress. Those present, including Theo and the members of the Verhannes family, steepled their fingers, looking down at those below as they spoke. You're going to turn something that could be resolved with 3 months of house arrest into a war? He reminded him. You're arrogant. Do you think you alone can stand against the forces of 15 families? Jae-kyung retorted coldly. That's something I have to resolve myself. Theo calmly voiced his inner thoughts. In situations with such a significant power disparity, is it common to settle disputes through a representative battle? Is that normal? After listening to Theo's proposition, Jae-kyung pondered over everything. Usually, an appeal means deciding the winner and loser through war. However, in this case, war is practically impossible due to the overwhelming power difference. Thinking about this, he envisioned the 2 sides confronting each other. Each side would send a representative, and the victor would be decided. In a single sword duel, it was a representative battle. He thought to himself, this meant that the defendant's representative would be Theo, while most likely the plaintiff's representative would be Asin. He didn't know what was going on in his mind. If that happened, it was almost certain that Theo would lose. So why did he choose this method? Did he have a hidden motive? He looked at him with a heavy heart. If he believed that Evelyn or I would step up as the representative, then you're mistaken. The old man stared intently at him. Theo, Jacker extended his hand to continue. According to the rules, we will decide on representatives and hold a representative battle. After 1 week, he asked those sitting above, what do you think? Edgevan remained seated above, looking down at the people below and thinking to himself. This is an obvious tactic. Edgevan pondered. He was calculating to have either dragon, demon, or Evelyn as his representative. But with their personalities, they wouldn't do it. You will have to fight yourself, Theo. Jacker, with his chin held high, looked down arrogantly at the person below. I will send Ashton and make you understand your place through death. Then smirked and replied, fine. So about the representative. Before Choi Hwan could finish, another voice cut in, interrupting them. I thought you were a child of few words. A powerful voice boomed, causing everyone present to tremble in fear. Breaking out in a cold sweat, the door slowly opened, revealing a tall figure, the owner of the voice. The figure continued, but you're quite the schemer. The voice filled Theo with dread. The man entering was Patriarch Kaiser. His crimson eyes with black, vertical pupils like a snake seemed to pierce through their very souls. He spoke coldly. You've changed so much since the last time I saw you. My son. Immediately, all 4 high-ranking officials knelt to greet him. We greet the Patriarch. Following their lead, he too knelt to greet him. Placing a hand on his chest, he said, Theo Jaeger, apprentice swordsman, greets the embodiment of the great dragon god. Suddenly, a system window appeared before him. The system window presented him with a quest. Scenario Quest 01. The path to the successor. Seize Camellia Palace and uncover its secrets. Theo Jaeger thought to himself. This is my first quest since completing the tutorial. The secrets of Camellia Palace. Excuse me? Is that the blue light? This is chaos. I forgot about that. There's definitely something here. Theo closed his eyes, trying to regain his composure. No, this isn't the time to get distracted. He slowly opened his eyes, facing the situation. Watching his esteemed father approach, Theo continued to think. I need to deal with this first. A new variable has appeared. My plan might get derailed. But he couldn't help but wonder why his father was here. Kai Jaeger ordered him to stand. Get up, my son. Obeying his command, Theo slowly rose. He spoke about Theo's situation, which he'd heard from others. I heard about your predicament on my way here, and it seems you're in quite a complicated situation. I heard that you want to appeal with a representative battle. Theo Jaeger looked slightly worried. After hearing his words, indeed, Kai. Jaeger put a hand to his chin thoughtfully. If that's the case, it will be difficult for you to participate in the representative battle. He spoke sternly. Who do you plan to choose as your representative? He hesitated at the question. This was a test. Edger, still kneeling, realized this as well. Sweating nervously. Wait, could it be? This was... Theo Jaeger faced him, replying. Who would represent me? There's no one like that. I intended to step up and appeal myself. Kai Jaeger responded, then you will lose. Theo wasn't one to back down, boldly replying to him. How can we know until we try? He straightened his back, hand on his chest, declaring confidently, even if forced to bow, I will not lower myself. Hearing this, the man suddenly grinned, then burst into laughter. Did you all hear that? My son's words. Kai Jaeger repeated Theo's words, for the others to hear. Even if forced, I will not lower myself. Kairoret. There are no words that better describe the Jaeger clan. Chill. Ryu. Jaeger, standing to the side, could only sigh in exasperation. Kai Jaeger, hands on his hips, boomed. Your attitude truly pleases me. Theo bowed his head in thanks. Thank you, Father, for the praise. He rejoiced inwardly. The representative battle wasn't just a lure. I don't want to fight. So it's a relief to be able to tell the truth, without hiding anything, thinking back to everything. When I gave the task to Evelyn and Gimian, the job I gave to Evelyn and proof of Princess Camelia's conspiracy to rebel. He smiled, calculating everything. If I have it, I can win without fighting. Interrupting his train of thought. Then I personally want to give you a chance. As Jacker's master? Those words made Theo suspicious. Want to try a single blow with me? Kai Jacker continued. Forget the trial. If you can withstand a single blow, I will absolve you of all your sins. Theo Jacker was utterly astonished. He thought, what? A single blow? He spoke as he turned and walked away. Just as he turned to leave, a voice suddenly interrupted, causing him to turn back. Patriarch, that's impossible. It was Edwin who had called out to him. He looked furious. He thought to himself, to offer him a single blow means you acknowledge him as an opponent? As he thought, he imagined Theo Jacker, dressed in luxurious attire, a majestic dragon by his side. If he survives, he'll be acknowledged by the patriarch. I don't think that damn Theo can withstand it. He clenched his fist, as if worried he might fail. I have to stop him. He can't gain the patriarch's favor. No sooner said than done. Edouard Choi began to make excuses. How dare those vassals and soldiers comment on your son's bloodline? Kai Jaeger's voice boomed, filled with authority. Silence. If a vassal dares to speak like that, you simply eliminate him. Fear finally struck him, his tone softening. I understand, patriarch. Then he noticed someone. His gaze fell upon Ryu Jaeger, and he asked, do you have something to say? Demon Dragon, you've been chuckling for a while now. Ryu Jaeger bowed his head, smiling. Nothing much. It's just been a while since you've shown such concern, patriarch. He replied, what nonsense are you talking about? He quickly changed the subject. Well, let's end this conversation here. What about you? Will your son do it? Zenwer stared at him, thinking, a single blow from the patriarch. Things have changed. In a way, I couldn't have imagined. My plan has crumbled. He grinned, but this change isn't so bad. Zenwer placed a hand on his chest and bowed. That's too much for me to bear. How can I compare a blow from father to a representative battle against vassals and soldiers? Kainwar frowned at him. Are you afraid? His expression quickly changed. He spoke coldly. No, I just mean, this transfer is unfair. It's not right. He countered the boy. Theo continued his argument. Since the trial has become more rigorous, shouldn't my compensation also be increased? After hearing his words, the man let out a surprised, oh. For example, Theo looked back, up at the higher-ups seated above. His eyes glowed red. Exudina dangereux, as he glared at Extravan, like Electric Camellia, for instance. As soon as he finished speaking, Extravan flinched, in utter terror, as if he couldn't believe what had just happened. Theo Joker laughed maniacally for almost an hour. His voice was filled with ambition. As he spoke each word deliberately, it was clear that Elder Camellia Extrovertian was enraged. The veins on his face bulged. He couldn't help but burst out, you bastard. But Elder's age helped him regain his composure. He only muttered to himself, this is madness, daring to bargain with the patriarch. Yet, Elder couldn't hide his disdain, the contempt he felt deep down. This guy truly doesn't know his place. An agreement is only made between equals. This arrogance will get him killed. However, Kai Joker, the patriarch of the clan, and Theo's father, easily agreed. This sudden agreement shocked the elder. Kai tilted his head and smirked. If you're aiming for the position of successor, at least that much courage is required. He looked up, scanning the faces around him. Any objections? All of Qian Ryong, everyone present, could sense his favoritism towards Theo. Clearly, the family head was pleased with his son's courage. The question Kai posed wasn't really a question. Therefore, they could only agree. There was nothing else they could do. Everything in Jihad belongs to you. How dare we question your decision? Kai was satisfied with that. He replied, good. Prepare the arena immediately. The family head turned and left, his voice ringing with authority as he declared the next event. I will test Theo Jihad right here. Theo knew this was an all-or-nothing gamble, but either way, it was a good opportunity. He gave a forced smile. The training ground was arranged soon after. Only the two of them were on the field. This was clearly a very difficult test. The four others with different emotions watched from the outside. Their cold expressions made it hard to guess what they were thinking. Sung Hyun was cursing inwardly. Damn it, this whole time, the trap I set to catch that brat has become his stage to show off. He looked at Jaiwo on the field. He tried to reassure himself. No, there's no need to worry. Because before, he was just a useless kid. Weak. That's why he had a little confidence. Even if the brat had gotten stronger. Impossible. It withstood a blow from the patriarch. Even a high-level swordsman would struggle to do that. He furrowed his brows, his eyes burning with murderous intent, cursing. Theo will die here. He must die here. But in the arena, the prey he had always underestimated had suddenly become the hunter. Theo was lucid enough to see through his delusions. I guess that's what he's thinking. Too bad for him. That won't happen. Thanks to the countless tutorial rewards I received. Suddenly, Kai let out a long He stroked his chin, speculating. Did you drink an elixir while I wasn't looking? No. Even if you did, such a rapid change would. I don't really care how you got stronger. Theo couldn't help but feel a chill. He's sharp. Even the 9 dragons didn't notice. And then, he heard his father's backhanded compliment. You truly are my son. Kynan hoisted his sword onto his shoulder, his cloak billowing, making him look even more imposing. So, are you ready? He had no choice but to answer, yes. Kynan wanted a fair fight, apparently. He had that much integrity. So he changed his weapon. Normally, I would use my great sword, but since you can't even use mana yet, I'll use this sword. Any objections? He politely replied, none at all, sir. The moment he finished speaking, the atmosphere around him changed. He smirked, all right. From that rusty sword, a blood-red energy pulsed, exploding outward. It was like a nuclear bomb, or even worse. A terrifying pressure suddenly materialized, suffocating the surrounding space. Kai swung his sword down. The blade flashed, a blinding, captivating light. He signaled, begin. Theo couldn't deny the fear, his entire body trembling uncontrollably. Even the moans escaping his throat were shaky, unstable. This was the true gap in their strength. He gritted his teeth, fighting to stay standing. Terror seized his heart. To exude such terrifying pressure with just his fighting spirit. Not just Theo, but even Kai was surprised. He praised, I'm quite surprised you're still standing. Theo looked up at him. His fox-like eyes glowed with a crimson light. A smug grin spread across his face. Of course, his strength stat had nearly tripled. Thinking back, the item that boosted his strength was the reward he received for completing the tutorial, the Fairy Experience Potion. The Fairy Experience Potion was a potion that could raise one's level by 5, provided they were below level 30. Theo gripped his sword tightly. Using it had raised him 5 levels, and he had poured all of his stat points into strength. Therefore, his stat sheet now looked quite different. At level 7, he had a strength stat of 52 and a luck stat of -31. His other stats remained largely unchanged. He raised his sword to his shoulder, feeling the power surge through him, surging within his body. This feeling was liberating, transcending ordinary limits and entering the extraordinary. With his power, looking at the majestic wall before him, for the first time, Theo felt confident. Facing someone so powerful, I can withstand a blow from father. A sword swung down, majestic and powerful, blindingly so. The light from the sword radiated a brilliant gold, as if trying to split heaven and earth. Not only Theo stared at it. It was a shock that others outside couldn't hide either, their astonishment evident. The sword descended. Theo lowered his stance, bringing his sword up to block. His gaze shifted upwards, towards the sky above. It was a sky painted crimson red, like blood. The sword strike was like a colossal beam of light, hurling downwards like a gigantic meteor. Yet Theo remained calm, thinking, I can see it. In the blink of an eye, the terrifying power crashed down, splitting the ground open. An earthquake erupted, the entire arena collapsing. Only a pile of rubble and thick dust remained. Kai could feel the tremors as the two swords clashed. He turned his back to Theo, unable to see him, but he knew he still stood there. Kai Jaeger couldn't contain his excitement, boiling in his veins. He smirked. It was a smile of pure satisfaction. After a long time, the blade began to chip. The sword in his hand crumbled into pieces and fell tattered to the ground. But what mattered was Theo Jaeger could still stand tall, with a proud smile, because the Jaeger clan had acknowledged him. Since I found such an obedient child, Ed gritted his teeth in fury. Contrary to his resentment, Zhu Lu wore a casual smile, as if he had anticipated this miracle. Kai announced the result of this trial. Tao Zaige has proven his innocence through willpower. He declared, the trial is over. At that moment, a blue notification appeared from the system. You have successfully completed the emergency quest. One strike of the Kaiji killer. Reward updated by the system immediately. You have received a treasury inventory as a reward. You have received a blue key as a reward. An unknown amount of time has passed. In a cozy room, with gold-inlaid windows welcoming the morning sunlight, Theo, with his wounds healed, was sleeping peacefully on a soft bed. His eyelids fluttered. His sharp, red eyes opened. Theo mumbled, Where am I? Cecilia immediately grasped his hand. Her voice filled with extreme worry as she cried out, You're finally awake. My precious son, you fainted. She burst into tears, her eyes welling up as she spoke nonstop. Do you know how worried I was when I heard you were hit by the clan leader's sword? How's your arm? Are you hurt anywhere else? Try moving your shoulder. I have to call a doctor if it's broken or dislocated. This made Theo reassure his mother. And if he didn't want to continue listening to her nagging, I'm fine. Mom, please calm down. He looked around the unfamiliar room he was in. Confused, he asked, but where am I? From outside, a man pushed the door open and entered. He said, by order of the clan leader. It was Juyul. He was responsible for delivering this announcement. The former madam of Camellia Ascensio Palace and the intelligence captain have been expelled. His jaw dropped. That meant Juyul understood what he wanted to say. He gave an affirmative smile. Indeed, you are in a castle, grand and magnificent. This is Camellia Palace. The system updates your progress. Scenario updated. Uploading progress. Mission. Scenario mission. The path of the successor to take over Camellia Palace and uncover its secrets. Camellia Palace holds a secret unknown to anyone. Outside Camellia Palace, in a small garden nearby, a foot in a high heel, full of rage, viciously crushes the flowers underfoot. It's none other than Ermi. She screams in fury. Why am I, the rightful owner of this palace, forced off my own property? The servants beside her try to calm her down. Lady Army, please calm down. We implore you to remain calm. The two men beside her remained silent. Then Ed suddenly called out, action. He replied, yes, uncle. A murderous aura emanated from Ed. His eyes were wide and white, each word growled. You must kill Theo Jacker. Arsene had the same intention. He bowed his head and said, I plan to sever his arm during the awakening ceremony. Ed interrupted him. No, his head, he ruthlessly demanded. His eyes bulged terrifyingly. You must take his head. Arsene pressed his lips together, silent. His wine-red eyes stared intently at his uncle. Meanwhile, at Camellia Palace, Theo had time to think. Things had taken a rather completely different from the original plan. He strolled around the palace, a dazed expression on his face. But this was a much better outcome than expected. I've captured Camellia Palace without having to use my trump card. Theo opened his system window. It was a new feature he had just received. Moreover, I have a second ability. Inventory. He reached into a square slot in the inventory. Then Theo pulled out an apple that he had stored earlier. He opened his mouth and took a bite. Theo juggled the apple in the air, muttering to himself, I don't understand why things like this can exist, but it will be very useful. Then, he reached into the inventory once more. Plus, Theo looked down at the item he just took out. Blue key. Blue key. Item to open the gate to hell. Requirement, compatible with the gate to hell. He held the metal object in his hand, his gaze unconsciously fixed in one direction. This key, definitely, it's a huge door, sealing the source of energy. Durable magic locking it tight, turning it into an impassable gate. However, Theo's intuition told him he could pass through it. He asserted, related to this place. I will get past that magic lock. Pow! Inserted the key into the lock on the door. The heavy iron door opened. Suddenly, strong, damp gusts of wind blew from the entrance. Damp and cold. Theo stared in awe at the newly revealed tunnel. It was the system interface, displaying a notification. You have discovered a dungeon. It continued. Experience earned within this dungeon will be doubled as a reward. He thought excitedly. A hidden cave within a room in Camellia Palace. This must be some kind of hidden quest. Theo muttered to himself, a confident air about him. Whatever it is, I'll complete it. Can't miss out on double experience. His footsteps faltered. All right, to fight in a place like this. How fi good. He should bring some weapons for self-defense. I shouldn't go in empty-handed. His system inventory at this moment was filled with swords. With such thorough preparations, Theo, sword and shield in hand, confidently stepped into the dungeon ahead. All right, let's go check it out. Inside the silent, dark cave, occasional torches flickered on the stone walls, casting a dim light. Theo cautiously observed his surroundings, and then he suddenly sensed the breath of a wild beast. Theo, startled, looked up. Before him stood a gigantic wolf monster, with thick, pure white fur, blood-red eyes, blood and saliva dripping from its jaws, as if ready to pounce at any moment. Theo was dubious. A wolf. He clicked his tongue. Quite big, as big as a wild beast. and then in a split second of carelessness, the ground beneath the wolf's feet suddenly collapsed with a startling sound. Its figure vanished without a trace. Theo's experience was sending him warning signals. He quickly raised his hand, using his shield to block the wolf's powerful lunge. Its fangs sank deep into the shield, producing a grating sound. Theo gritted his teeth, cursing under his breath. "You're pretty strong, you mutt." He swung his right-hand sword, slashing directly at it. He roared, "But I won't lose in a battle of strength." The wolf swiftly recoiled. It hurriedly retreated, dodging the sharp blade. The wolf monster flew into a rage. It let out a ferocious roar. Theo remained calm and unafraid. He gripped his sword tightly and charged. They clashed. In a blink of an eye, several blows were exchanged. His shield began to crack. Theo backed away, observing his opponent. Its hide was thick and it was agile. Normal attacks wouldn't even scratch it. The wolf continued its relentless assault. Theo thought, this was no ordinary wolf. It might even be as strong as a monster from the demon sea beyond the northern wall. That would explain its power. This wouldn't be easy. The monster raised its claws, razor-sharp claws that could easily disembowel a horse. As its claws slashed down, Theo channeled his strength into his toes and launched himself forward. It was a swift and unexpected attack. In that moment, he regretfully thought, if only I could recreate that flash of light. The flash of light he had witnessed when facing his father's single strike. Theo had seen it once before, a pure white arc, a blindingly pure light from above. Theo had always wanted to praise it, from the bottom of his heart. So beautiful and magnificent. And now, to win this battle, Theo yearned to unleash that attack. He raised his sword, his face filled with murderous intent, staring down his opponent. With his own, the bright white blade flashed down with a whoosh. However, the wolf easily dodged the attack. On the contrary, it began to counterattack him. Theo hurriedly backed away. Frustrated, he clicked his tongue. Tisk. Of course, copying it wouldn't be that simple. The blow he aimed for was the single, decisive strike. In short, one single strike to finish off the opponent. Immediately, Theo racked his brain. If the key was to pour everything into a single sword strike, he released his grip on the shield. As the heavy shield fell to the ground and created a gust of wind, he decided to focus on his sword skills and techniques. Relying on speed, at this moment, he appreciated the past training sessions more than ever, the ones Evelyn had taught him. The wolf monster continued to observe its enemy, and in a fleeting moment, the human it had been watching suddenly vanished. The wolf's pupils constricted. It grew wary. Theo appeared right in front of it. With blinding speed, sword in hand, he thrust. The sharp blade pierced something soft. Blood sprayed, releasing a pungent smell. He withdrew his sword. The silver blade was now crimson. The wolf remained standing, but blood poured from its wound. One of its eyes had been pierced. The wolf went berserk. Sweat poured down its fur like rain. Seeing the result of his thrust, it had been effective. Not bad, Theo thought to himself, pleased. The wolf charged again. But now, he felt confident enough to face it head on. I can do this. And so, Theo continued to fight like that for the next 2 months. At training ground number 4, under a clear sky, Nolan looked around and started a conversation with Jupiter. There are even more people now. He nodded in response. Indeed, at this rate, we should change training grounds. The two began to chat. Now the rumor that the clan head taught young Master Theo a single strike has spread, and we keep getting more people wanting to spar with him. Jupiter sighed and said, although the young master. Suddenly, a voice boomed from behind, interrupting them. Hey, you guys. It was Henry a Magic, swordsman trainee from the Plum Blossom clan. He shrugged, addressing them with a disdainful tone. When's your high and mighty young master going to show up? Where's he been for the past 2 months? I thought he never missed a day of training. Henry scoffed mockingly. I guess the coward ran away. After his fabricated story spread too far, the two men gritted their teeth at the insults, but they remained calm and endured. Seeing no response, the blond man started boasting again. Maybe it was a lie, because he won the trial. But with no witnesses, he must have exaggerated. Henry was digging his own grave. And so was the news that he had defeated the Serpent Dragon Society. Everything has its limits. Before he could finish his sentence, He received a punch straight to the face. Henry Zip was sent flying backward. Dozens of teeth scattered. Blood started to flow. The knight beside him shouted in panic, "Henry!" Then he pointed at Jaiwu. "Jaiwu, how dare an uneducated fool like you face him?" Not only Jaiwu, but dozens of sharp gazes, as if wanting to devour him alive, from the other knights, silenced him immediately. He didn't dare utter another word. Jaiwu cursed, his face contorted in anger. "Ugly bastards, you are nothing compared to the young master." Aiden calmly reminded Jaiwu, "You shouldn't comment on people's appearances." "Huh," he grumbled. "Whatever. I don't like these bastards coming here and causing trouble." Then Jaiwu intentionally raised his voice as he looked towards the group from the palace. They were flattering the young master yesterday. He led the other swordsmen in drawing their swords. This is war. Henry's side wasn't backing down either. They also drew their swords and shouted back, "Do you ignorant fools really want to die?" But then a refreshing scent began to spread through the air. Long, light blue braids flowed gently in the wind. The surrounding temperature began to drop suddenly. The blades of both sides instantly froze. From the midst of the battle between the two sides, a young girl suddenly appeared. Carrying an oppressive chill, a bone-chilling cold emerged, coating the arena in a thin layer of ice. The air grew thick and heavy, making it hard to breathe. Jaiwu was stunned. Since when? Haizu's comrades stammered in fear. "Day!" he screamed, looking at the red-eyed girl. Jacker. This girl's identity was one of the 4 heavenly kings, Day Jacker. And it didn't stop there. The fight descended into further chaos, as a bellicose laugh echoed. "How could you leave me out of all the fun?" It was a tall, young man, with fiery red hair and dark skin. He was the northern heavenly king, Black Bear, Hyuxilang. Jaiwu recoiled in shock. Lan was here too? 2 of the 4 heavenly kings. Is Lan paying attention to them? "Is that all of you?" he asked irritably. "Where's Haiyan-ho?" Henry's companion asked, dumbfounded. "Who?" Ran raised his sword high, his voice booming. "Are you deaf? I said Haiyan-ho, the master of this nation." Silence hung in the air. He stood frozen, lost in thought. Ran roared, "I came here to fight Theo Decker." Meanwhile, deep inside the dungeon, danger lurked around every corner. Theo Decker, in tattered clothes, was gasping for breath, sweat dripping from his brow. The sword in his hand was broken in 2. In the silent space, the system's blue screen gently chimed. "Level up." The faint glow of a lamp on the stone wall was the only light in the darkness. Immediately after, a series of identical notifications rang out continuously, forming an endless stream of light. "You have reached the maximum level." The system announced the final information. As Theo sat exhausted on the monster's corpse, "You have slain 170 monsters, and the dungeon now has only 1 danger remaining. Monsters in the dungeon, 1/171. Beyond the wolf carcass he was sitting on lay a scattering of broken swords, blood, and monster corpses, enough to terrify any knight. But all of them were now completely annihilated by him alone. Theo's final stats were displayed. With negative luck, all other stats were below average, except for strength, 91, and magic power, 198. A health potion was uncapped. Theo looked up and chugged it down in one gulp. It was a beginner's recovery potion, consumable type. Its effect restores 10 health points and heals wounds. He looked at the potion in his hand and muttered, "I almost died a few times back there, but this saved me." Pow! Looked at the monster corpses scattered around, reminiscing, and mumbled, "It was tough at first, but things have gotten much easier. But time flies, it's already been 2 months." The system window now showed only one final task. The final beast in Dungeon 1 on floor 171. He looked up, his expression serious, and said, "Just one left." At the end of the dungeon, ahead was a stone staircase, leading upwards. A deep, resonant sound echoed through the cavern. The air grew heavy with a sense of danger, leading him to the conclusion that this usually signaled the boss's imminent arrival. The system announced his current location, 5th floor entry. With heavy steps, he slowly ascended the stairs. He raised his broken sword, letting out a sigh of frustration. This is useless now. Theo tossed it aside and drew the last remaining sword from his inventory. It was a gleaming blade, its hilt intricately carved from dark wood. He thought to himself, "This is all I have left?" In truth, This sword held a special significance for him, a ceremonial sword, a birthday gift from his mother. His gaze was fixed on the blade, lost in thought. In his past life, he and his mother had many disagreements. Before his awakening ceremony, he tossed it aside in his room and left it to rust. But looking closer, it was a fine sword forged from white snow steel. Theo pressed his lips together, a sorrowful expression clouding his face. His memories began to drift. It was a day many years ago, when the door to his room suddenly burst open. Cecilia Jucker entered with a joyous air. Behind her, dozens of servants carried enormous gifts, piled high like mountains. She clasped her hands together excitedly and exclaimed expectantly, "Happy birthday, my precious son! Happy birthday, my beloved boy!" Mother waited until midnight just to give you a present. But Theo back then responded to her curtly. "Mother," he hugged the swords to his chest, his cold gaze fixed on Caesarea. "The awakening ceremony is coming soon. I don't have time to waste on birthday presents." He turned to leave, using the sharpest words. To hurt his mother. "You should know better. Good equipment can't change bloodline." Caesarea stood frozen, surrounded by servants, eager to please her. She heard the one she loved most coldly dismiss her. "Please leave." "But that's all in the past," he said regardless. Theo stared straight at his present reality. He resolutely walked forward, telling himself that he wouldn't repeat the mistakes of the past. The system issued a warning. "This is the boss room. A powerful monster will appear. Please be careful." Theo stared ahead in astonishment. A part of a long tail, and the claws of the boss monster were visible, its familiar jaws clamped shut. It was sleeping on its claws. Before him was a boss that looked strangely familiar. It was sound asleep, but its form was unmistakable. He wondered, a dragon? And then, feeling the pressure emanating from it, Theo became even more certain of his assessment. No, it's just a low-level dragon. But even a low-level dragon is still a dragon. He paused in thought. They say the Jaeger family are descendants of dragons, and the boss of this strange quest is a dragon. Theo tightened his grip on his sword. He harbored a hidden resentment. Was this just a coincidence? He muttered, "I don't know." He raised his sword, ready to attack, as he looked at the dungeon boss. But one thing was certain. He had to defeat this thing to complete the quest. Just then the system suddenly displayed 2 consecutive notifications. Scenario quest. Path of the Successor. Take over Camellia Palace and uncover its secrets. Camellia Palace, hiding some sort of secret. A secret yet to be revealed. Dungeon Beast, level 171. Does Theo have the ambition to overcome this? However, he still wasn't confident enough to face this creature. Could he really win? It was a dragon after all. His red eyes gleamed. His sword glowed, ready for a preemptive strike. He had to try a quick attack. He had experience after all. He'd practiced on wild wolves before. And luckily, that wolf had been wounded by that move. And then, they all perished under his blade. Theo remembered the feeling. Focus. He channeled his strength into the sword and thrust forward. With precise calculation, perhaps not as masterful as his father's dragon's moment, the low-level dragon sensed the killing intent and opened its eyes. Meanwhile, his thoughts continued to race. If I utilize the dragon's heart to its fullest, I can inflict serious damage. The sword plunged deep, sending blood spraying everywhere. The low-level dragon was hit, and it roared in pain. But that only fueled Theo's confidence. All right. However, his joy was short-lived as the dragon's powerful right wing slammed down towards him. Theo quickly jumped back to dodge. Debris flew everywhere. As expected, my attacks are more effective. I was hoping to pierce its brain, but seeing the dragon still fiercely resisting, it was clear enough. But it seems my attack wasn't strong enough. But I've seen an opportunity. He gripped the hilt of his sword with both hands. His body flickered through the air, appearing and disappearing in bursts of speed. With each strike, his sword carved deep gouges into its scales. That was his special skill, vector step. Confident in his ability to win, Theo charged forward once more. He narrowed his eyes, calculating his next move. If he could just distract it first. With a normal attack, Theo thought, then aimed for a weak spot. The dragon roared and unleashed its own skill. Low-level dragon fear dominated the battlefield. Its violet eyes glowed intensely. The skill inflicted a few debuffs on him. The fear status effect, reducing his movement speed by 10%. His body felt noticeably heavier. Theo cursed under his breath. Damn it, my body. The monster lunged, its sharp claws extended, aiming to seize and crush him. With difficulty, Theo managed to parry the attack with his sword, but it wasn't enough. He was sent flying backward, crashing into the cliff face. Dust and debris billowed up. Theo lay amidst the rubble, his body aching as he struggled to sit up. Maybe it's the boss for a reason. A prolonged fight will be disadvantageous. They paused for a brief moment, then clashed once more. Without hesitation, Theo thought resolutely, I need to target its weak spot. To end this quickly, his eyes swept over the dragon, cold and sharp, as if he had already seen its fatal weakness. The dragon was still, charging forward, its sharp fangs bared in a terrifying snarl. Theo thought to himself, a dragon's weakness is its vision. He stared at the scales on its chest. Theo poured all his strength into this attack. He moved with blinding speed, leaving afterimages in his wake. His blade flashed forward relentlessly, aimed directly at the dragon's vital point. Dragon scales shattered under the sharp blade. The dragon couldn't react in time. It never expected its weakness to be discovered. Its eyes widened in shock, blood gushing from its eyes. Theo, without hesitation, drove his blade deeper into the wound. The dragon roared in excruciating pain. Blood splattered across Theo's face. He let out an arrogant smirk. All right, but the dragon didn't fall. Its eyes were still wide open, and its draconic breath lingered. Theo frantically drew his sword. Outside, in the training grounds, an argument was taking place. What did you say, Ragnar? Hyachin frowned and pointed at himself. Theo Jagger should fight me first. Jay ignored him. She covered her ears, refusing to listen. The loser should sit this one out. He was furious. He roared in frustration, trying to reason with her. That was 3 years ago. Skills improve every day, and 3 years is enough time to close the gap. Now, say it again, loser. That made Hyachin clench his fists in anger. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Finally, he swung his sword in a fit of rage. Setting conditions? Fine. Let's have another duel. The winner gets to face young Master Theo. Day lightly lifted his blade, stopping the giant blade. The onlookers paled, murmuring amongst themselves. What in the world is going on? I don't know, but I'm scared. Just then, a figure slowly approached from afar. The figure calmly drew his sword. In its scabbard, with just those two, he easily stopped the fierce fight between two members of the Four Guardians. The newcomer was Jinmuto Natsuo. His silver eyes glanced coldly, sweeping over the two of them. If you want to fight, do it elsewhere. This is young Master Theo's territory. I won't allow you two to cause trouble while he's away. Lon grew even more excited when he appeared. He exclaimed excitedly, Oh, Jimin, perfect timing. I want to fight you too. Jimin looked annoyed. Hyakji, didn't you hear what I said? But at that moment, he suddenly felt a chilling, killing intent. Viscous, sticky, and terrifying, crawled down his spine. A heavy, nameless pressure filled the training ground. He glanced around in terror. What was this killing intent? From afar, a familiar figure carrying the heavy stench of blood slowly approached. Jimin stared at Taeyong in astonishment, confusion evident in his eyes. This pressure, what happened? Jay's icy expression remained unchanged. And in this moment, too, he simply stared upwards, silent and cold. Hugh sneered provocatively at him. He glared at the young man approaching, burning with killing intent. His voice dripped with excitement. You finally came. According to Theo Jacker, at that time, Tail's new special skill was still active. The skill Lower Dragon's Fear blanketed the battlefield. The beast maintained its ferocious expression. Suddenly, a few seconds later, it stumbled, staggering as if losing its balance. Then it collapsed to the ground with a loud thud. On its back was Theo Jacker's sword, deeply embedded in its flesh. Just then, a system notification suddenly popped up. Congratulations! You have successfully hunted a low-level dragon. He bent down, examining its scales, and thought to himself, it started thrashing when I touched its reverse scales. I really thought I was done for. He then leaned back, lying on the dragon's back, and breathed a sigh of relief. Thankfully, it eventually tired itself out. Its reverse scales are its weak point after all. At that moment, notification sounds rang out. You have received low-level Dragon Fang. You have received low-level Dragon Claw. Catching his attention, he sat up abruptly, as two dragon fangs slowly materialized from the system screen, along with the description, low-level dragon fawn. Material type, enhancement material effect, used for weapon forging, increases durability. Upon further confirmation, this is used for forging weapons in SAO. Another description box appeared. Low-level dragon claw. Material type, enhancement material effect, used for weapon forging, increases sharpness. Looking back at his sword, an idea suddenly struck him. I should use these to repair my sword. After all, I received it from my mother. Hunting that dragon really wore it down. Suddenly, a notification popped up, catching his attention. You have obtained the skill. Dragon's Fear low level. He was a little taken aback. He seemed to not understand what was happening. A skill in SAO? At that moment, capital letters appeared, making him unable to believe his eyes. Dragon's Aura. Yes, he received a new skill. Lesser Dragon's Fear, rank D+. Proficiency 1%. Emits the unique aura of a lesser dragon, overwhelming those around him, instilling fear in targets weaker than the user. Taehyun was ecstatic to receive it. But I heard, only the chosen ones can use that. He was a bit confused, but quickly brushed it aside, excitedly accepting the reward. He never thought he'd have a chance to possess it. Suddenly, Taehyun's small celebration halted when he tossed his weapons into the system. Even so, Theo walked lost in thought. I'm not sure if it'll be useful in Zahard. He turned around and thought. After all, that place is full of experts. Behind him were the remnants of his battle with the dragon. Meanwhile, the system announced, the Origin Electricity Dungeon has been cleared. The wooden door opened with a creak, accompanied by voices. Regardless, this was the moment Theo returned to the Red Rose Palace, peacefully, and completed his mission. Main Story Quest 1. The Successor's Path. Occupy the Origin Electricity Palace and uncover its secrets. Origin Electricity Palace 1/1. Secret 1 of 1. Only then could he truly let go of his burden. Quest completed. A notification rang out. Congratulations on completing main quest number 1. Your reward for completing the quest is... The system slowly materialized an orb in front of him. It landed in his palm. An orb that looked like a cat's eye. It was the Ancestor's Compass. A versatile item. Effect guides the holder towards the ancestor. The vague name and description of the item left him confused. Ancestor's Compass. He brought the item closer to his eyes, questioning himself. What is this? Does it have something to do with the next quest? He decided to push away the unanswered questions, just like a difficult math problem. Opening the system information panel again, he decided to keep it for now. Then, he dragged his heavy steps back to his room, sighing tiredly as he walked. I should go back to my room and rest. I'm so tired. But his plans for a perfect vacation were shattered when a mundane problem pulled him back to reality. With a loud yell, Young Master Theo, I finally found you. There's an emergency. At that moment, the maid froze when she saw a stream of blood flowing from the top of his head down to his forehead. The maid's face was filled with shock. Oh my goodness. Look at you. Where have you been? He only responded to her surprise with a pained expression. It's nothing. What is it, Mary? Only when he asked, did the maid suddenly remember her task. She hurriedly delivered the news. There's a brawl happening in training ground number 4. Hearing that familiar location, he jolted and confirmed. What? Immediately after, he stormed into the training ground. The killing intent from the low-level Dragon's Fear skill he just received from the system was reflected on part of his face. The rest was covered in shadow, and his blazing red eyes were wide open, filled with murderous intent. A system notification popped up. Low-level skill Dragon's Fear engulfs the battlefield. Deep within his pupils lay an immense loathing for being disturbed. He roared, "Get lost! I need to rest!" An aura emanated as if to drag anyone who dared disturb him into a pre-dug hole and readily bury them alive if necessary. This made everyone tremble in fear. At the same time, Theo's gaze fell upon the low-ranking soldiers collapsing behind him. The sight amused him. Their killing intent was overwhelming. Then, after encountering the person he'd been searching for to challenge, he charged forward with a massive sword in his hand, its size and speed, leaving a trail of dust and white smoke in his wake. His suppressed laughter filled the air. I knew it. I had a feeling you would be interesting. You're mine. Jacker, let's see how strong you are. And swiftly, his sword flashed a vibrant purple. However, despite his superior physique and weapon, Theo effortlessly parried his attack. A single swipe of his slender blade was enough to deflect the great sword, disrupting its intended trajectory. His swordsmanship was completely within Grid and Remington's sight. Now he burst out by inertia. Kraugle's overwhelming emotions spread throughout his brain. Signals flooded his mind. My attack was blocked so easily. On the other side, the person who pushed him back with a simple move was dumbfounded, unable to believe his eyes. I blocked it. Quickly, he regained his balance. Grid had withstood his attack and provoked him at the same time. He was angry, roaring, "I won't let this stand." He activated the blackening Kraugle skill in an instant. Brainwave tracking swiftly analyzes and assesses his being, preparing to react to his attacks. He's always been considered the weakest among the northern forageurs because he lacks versatile skills and isn't very intelligent. And in his ear, Hukuslin's arrogant roar echoes. "Try this." Hukuslin's voice boomed. According to Joker, in that same moment,